we're just coming out of a closed session where we discussed 2 items.
And I believe there was correction on one, and that was regarding the Rutledge settlement matter, directing the city to report back to their attorney.
We declined the settlement offer. A while ago in the newspaper, you might have read that Brett had offered to pay back the money that he's already legally required to pay back to us if we withdraw our money. So we decided to decline that offer, if it could even have been considered an offer. And then one other item, anticipated litigation that we discussed. Anything to
There
report?
was no report.
No report. We all stand and join with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. Let the roll call show that directors are present except for Peter Sullivan. And let's move on to approval of the agenda. We're going to pull item 11 or continue it to the next meeting because the union representing employees would like an opportunity to review more time to review the reimbursement travel policy. We'll bring it back in May after they've had a chance to do that. And then because I believe that most folks are in the room for item number 15, we would like to reorganize things a little bit, and because I believe that item number 9, our presenter, is not yet here. Is that correct? Is that Renee Goddard? Renee Goddard? No. So I propose moving item number 15 to directly after item number 10, just noting that we may skip over item number 9 if Renee has not showed up yet. So it'll go 9, 10, what is now number 15, and then on to what is now number 12. May I have a motion to move the agenda?
Also move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Sorry, any public comment on the agenda?
One question, Rick Alfred. On Director Egger's point, the summary of the meeting last week, it says attachment part 3, I believe, and it doesn't correspond with
What item are you just talking about?
well, that is the confusion. So here, in informational items, under C, it says April Finance Committee, and attachment 3, I believe, in the packet, it has the summary of last week's meeting. Just how it was positioned in the packet. And I guess that was actually part of 15?
Yes, I think substantively what you're looking for is in 15, which is where Director Egger's summary is.
Mine was
Attachment
attached
C.
C.
Attachment C? And what does it say there in attachment C?
It's part of agenda item 15,
yeah.
but attachment C here doesn't have, my packet doesn't have. I think what you're talking about should be 15C, not attachment C.
It's 15C.
15C, okay. And A and B, just the number.
All
there
within
was
item
a-
number 15.
Okay.
Sorry if that's wasn't clear.
The ABC part, that's informational stuff.
Right. But you don't see the A or B, it just
Maybe your packet got.
was the one online.
Oh, okay.
Apologies if there was some change around. I think substantively, I mean, you were able to see the memo, yes? Attachment C, you have something
Right.
that says attachment C? Okay.
Yeah, and I suppose that was part of agenda item 15, so I just wanted to, but online that there was a little bit of confusion.
Okay. In our packets, that was included in item number 15, but I'm sorry, we don't, we get them in hard copy. All right, so I have a motion and a second. Edgar Guasco, move the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Moving on to item number 6, open time for public to raise items not on the agenda or for future agendas. Is anyone here to speak to an item that is not on the agenda tonight?
Yeah, I want to repeat something that I'm
Could you
Name
let
and town, please.
Clayton Smith, I live in Mill Valley. I wanted to repeat concerns I've had with the method of accounting that is used in these special districts such as this. In particular, as they have the consequence of what you're experiencing now, which is the sudden shortfall in meeting your obligations to repair your infrastructure. And what I'm saying is that I think this deficiency in public accounting as it reflects upon government enterprises, that there should be some way by which the government enterprise, particularly one infrastructure intensive such as yours, reflects in their financial statements the actual wear and tear, the depreciation and the requirement for replacement and maintenance on your facilities, so that the public would be, one, aware of the efficiencies, and secondly, understand, and would perhaps be helpful for you and also people in the future, to begin acknowledging the need to have set-asides for the future repair and replacement tasks that inevitably lie ahead to these kinds of facilities. So that when you finally come to a date like all over Marin County we're coming to now, where virtually every district is seeing a doubling in their rates, and many people on fixed incomes are wondering how this had come to pass. And it came to pass largely because this expense was not acknowledged and was kind of put off, kicked the can down the road, and now the cans have kind of come to the end of the road, and the feds are now suing everybody for the deficiencies of this infrastructure. So this is a thing I'd like, perhaps, even if you had a conclave of all of the agencies sometime in the county in the future, that you would make a point on the agenda for your management and your financial, your whatever financial accounting services you're using, to take this task so the future generations don't end up facing this surprise bill as we thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Rick Collins, Fairfax. Just as is evident from this meeting, this might be a good time to bring up for next month, on May 21st, and Director Egger again mentioned this last month, and a larger venue would be welcome if we could perhaps find a place to welcome the public.
There is a couple of seats up front, and there's an extra chair here too, if you don't want to stand or sit on the floor. Sure.
We've got 2 seats up here, one here.
I could stand too. Another seat.
Okay, let's stand.
Anyone else from the public wish to speak about something not on the agenda?
Yeah, I'm Nancy O'Connor. I live in San Anselmo, and I'd just like to make a general comment that I am rather unhappy that most public agencies rely on 218 to raise rates without the public really getting a chance to they'll never get the number, the 50% plus one of all the stuff that's sent out. I think that you could do the public a great service if you could look at alternate ways to talk to the public and discuss the financial issues that are facing the district, instead of just going ahead and doing a 218 saying you had your chance to send in your opposition, but you could never get 50% of the district plus one to actually bring it back to the board to question it. So it's a done deal, and that's what the water district is doing. And I would love if Ross Valley would actually start to have this dialogue with the public about this. It would be a lot healthier, and we would all feel much better when the rates increase, because we would know a lot more. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Rick Adler, and I live in Larkspur. I'm going to read what I'm writing so I don't get confused. I want to protest the proposed new rates because they are too much and unaffordable by me because the Great Recession broke me, the banksters. And to protest unit-based charging method because it is unfair to those who conserve water and use gray water systems. And to propose to switch to flow-based rating system because it will encourage water conservation and gray systems. And will reduce the flow into sewers, thus saving the Ross Valley Sanitary District big dollars at the Central Marin Sewage Processing Plant. And will be much more affordable for me because I use so little water and put so little into the sewer system. Because my gray water systems send my wastewater to my thirsty, drought-stricken redwood trees. Currently, I am paying $1,728 each year for my property tax bill, which is more for the RVSB, which is more than all my other taxes on the bill combined. It's also more than all my other utilities, including electric, gas, water, garbage, phone, and more combined. Your new rate will raise what I pay each year to $2,356. And I bet you will find you'll have to raise that even more if passed this program. I'm paying currently $864 each year for my home that has 3 toilets, 4 sinks, 3 showers, and a washing machine. And simultaneously, I'm paying $864 each year for my little cottage behind my house, which has just 1 toilet flushed with gray water that goes into the sewer, and 1 sink and 1 shower whose gray water goes on my thirsty redwood trees. Both my home and cottage share the same 1 lateral and the same tax parcel. If you won't switch to the flow-based system, then I think you should agree it's only fair you should only charge me for 1 unit. If you won't do that, then how can I take my little cottage off your system? How can I go about installing a composting toilet and maybe putting a cap or a plug into the lateral from my cottage so I don't have to pay all that extra money and I can keep my house? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to something on the agenda? All right, thank you. We move on to item number 7, standing committees report out. We have both finance and electrical landing and HR this month. So you report out on the finance committee?
Did Peterson, yeah. It was a pretty benign meeting. We went over how much we have in reserves. We went over the quarterly report on here. And it looks like, and Greg, can you kind of chime in, please, a little bit on the quarterly report? We're under a percentage, right, pretty much, in a lot of areas. And there's really good explanations why throughout the quarterly report. And our reserve currently, right now, is it 7 million? Who? And that, most of that is proceeds from the restructuring, which will be spent soon.
I'm happy to get a real brief overview of the quarterly report.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay.
You do much better.
Okay, so just for, I think if anyone has, this is item 8D of the agenda package. And starting about a year ago, the district began producing quarterly financial reports to basically track progress on the budget. And the format and content on these reports is pretty standardized. So if you look at this quarter's and you go back to the prior 3 quarters, you'll see very similar layout and content. And it's just broken down into the major income and expenditure categories for the district. And so I'm going to keep this at a very high level. In terms of revenue, most of the district's revenue comes from the sewer service charges, for about 50% from sewer service and about 50% from, pardon me, I misspoke. Most of it comes from sewer service charges, and then a smaller portion comes from ad valorem property taxes. And the revenue to date is within about 2.6% of the forecasted. And let me put some context. We're reporting on the 3rd quarter of the fiscal year, and our fiscal year runs from July 1 to the end of June. So what we're reporting on is the end of the 3rd fiscal quarter for the district. So revenues were within about 2.6% of the plan. No really big surprises there. The one notable item is that we did make a long overdue update to our connection fee charges back in calendar year 13, and that just happened to coincide with some, sort of a spurt in new development activity. So connection fee revenues were well ahead of plan because of the combination of those two influences. On expenditures, we generally break those down into about 3 major categories. The first one being our Central Marin Sanitation Agency treatment charges, which the district as a member agency pays. The individual retail customers don't pay that. You pay our rates, and then we, along with the other member agencies, pay CMSA for those treatment services. And those are fairly predictable, so the actual charges are within about 3.7% of the forecasted charges for the year. On salaries and benefits, which is just what it sounds like, it's for all district staff, salaries and benefits. We've had some offsetting influences there in terms of some vacant positions that were left unfilled for certain amounts of time. But we are within about 2% below the forecasted expenses for the year-to-date through the 3rd quarter. And then other operational expenses, which covers a wide variety of things from vehicle maintenance to our PG&E power for our pump stations, miscellaneous minor equipment expenses, and so forth. Those are running about 11% below budget year-to-date. And then other administrative expenses, which covers, again, a wide range of miscellaneous items. Those are within about 4.7% of budget. We added a new section to this quarterly report to provide a periodic check-in on insurance claims and payouts. And the year-to-date amount for those is about $44,000. So that's for all kinds of minor property damage that occurs with all the activity we have going out in the community, and those are typically taken care of by our insurance carrier. But we have a deductible, just as you would on a typical retail policy. So these are the actual payouts that the district has had to make. They're again about $44,000 year-to-date. Outside services, which covers a whole wide range of things from information technology to legal services to our human resources consulting. Those are running about 21% below budget so far. And most of that is because we have some grant funds that we have not, for a variety of reasons, been able to move. So overall, again, they're about 21% below budget. Capital expenditures, which is a fairly good chunk of the budget, is tracking. At the moment, it's about 35% below the year-to-date, but we have a number of major capital projects already underway. So those contracts have been let, the work is being done. And if we look at the forecast of the work that's going to be occurring over the next, roughly through the rest of this fiscal year, through the next quarter, we're showing that we're going to come in to probably somewhere within about 3 to 4% of the forecasted capital budget expenditures. So overall, all of the major income and expense categories are generally within the low single-digit variances, and in all those cases, the basis for the variances is pretty well identified. And then the last section is a new section we added after some earlier discussions of the last few months with the board. And it's a section that's intended to show a very detailed breakout of the use of the bond proceeds that from the bond sale that we did last calendar year. And that bond sale did two things for the district. It achieved what we call the short-term debt restructuring. It retired two debt instruments that the district had. One was basically a retail mortgage that we had on the Kerner Street building, and it retired a larger, approximately $8.4 million debt instrument that we had with Bank of Marin for capital projects that had been issued back in, I think, 2008. So the new bond issuance retired both of those debt instruments and then provided a little over $8 million in net additional monies to fund the district's capital program. For those of you who remember, going into early 2013, the district was in pretty severe financial straits. We had no money for capital program at that time, and we were operating off of an emergency loan from Marin County basically to cover our near-term cash flow needs. So one of the objectives of the near-term debt restructuring was to give us about a year to restart the capital projects and get some of our other financial, basically get our financial house in order and give us time to get kind of basically to where we are today. So out of the $8.2 million in proceeds that were left for capital projects, approximately $3.5 million of those have been spent to date, and that leaves remaining bond funds of about $4.7 million, and those are expected to be spent probably the next roughly 18 to 24 months with the existing and scheduled capital projects. So the main point on that is that we were striving to put together a very clear and easy to follow accounting of where the bond proceeds have gone, because there's been concerns expressed about the transparency and so forth of that process. So that's a new feature of the quarterly financial report. We asked about reserves. The district adopted, for its first time in its history, we adopted specific formal financial reserve targets with the start of the new fiscal year budget back in July of 2013. And we have a section that tracks the progress towards achieving those reserves. Most of these reserves are going to take 3 to 5 years to achieve. They're fairly significant changes in the financials, so they're not going to happen over one cycle. But we have gotten, we've clearly established a $1 million emergency reserve, and making progress on operations and maintenance and the other key reserves. So basically, it's tracking generally where we hoped it would, but it's a work in progress. So overall, the year-to-date financials are tracking quite close to what was budgeted. And the single biggest variance really is just our capital projects because of the delay in some of those projects actually getting underway, and then us seeing the resulting, incurring the resulting costs. So we're basically behind in terms of executing and moving capital projects out the door. Otherwise, the budget is generally very close to what we had forecasted.
You did give a handout on Finance Committee on legal. Did the board get that?
Just the standard monthly legal report?
Yeah.
Yes, and that's in the board packet.
Email. You emailed
Oh, I
me.
apologize. You did, because it was late and
So,
I sent it out. Correct.
And so this month it was
Just a little over $28,000.
And that's the second lowest I've ever seen since I've been on these three. So,
Yeah, so the legal fee has been a big concern for a long time, and if folks are interested, for about the past 9 to 10 months, there's been a standard feature in every agenda board package, which is our monthly legal activities report. And I guess the main thing we all want to know is that it's trending down and to the right, which is what we wanted. So that's what's happening with legal fees.
And that month, last month would have been a lot lower, but we've had a lot of public records requests and a lot of contact with board members on this.
well, we're over budget regardless. We're over, we must be up to 400,000. And we budgeted for 368. So, but you're right, we are in a new trend. That's kind of all what I wanted to say. Not a lot. Thank you, Greg.
Frank, do you want to report on the Larson Landing Committee?
Well, it's an agenda item, so let's just take it up at that time.
Yeah. So we did the same one. So we met for Human Relations Committee, but the items that we discussed were in preparation for this meeting, so.
And it was very productive.
Great. All right, well then we'll move on to item number 8, the consent calendar. Does anyone have anything they want to pull from the consent calendar to discuss?
I'd like to,
Well, no, do any members of the public? Oh, sorry.
It's a quick question. On the cash balances, it says Bank of Marin / Wells Fargo. Is there a list someplace of all the bank accounts that Ross Valley Sanitary District has, and it's
Those are the only two. We have the account at Bank of America, Bank of Marin, and the Wells Fargo accounts. There are no other district accounts.
So the Wells Fargo is 41,000?
It's a little over $40,000, Frank.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the balance is all in Bank of Marin?
The vast majority of it is Bank of Marin, which is where we do all of our normal banking. Yeah.
Perhaps it should be broken out for the next report. Bank of Marin.
Certainly, easy to do, yeah,
Wells Fargo,
absolutely,
X amount.
okay.
So we know where the money is.
Which, sure.
Has that been shown in that kind of monthly? The Wells
It's
Fargo?
a combination, they're combined.
Yeah, with the.
Which report are you referring to? So I can make sure I can make an
It's,
amendment.
cash balances.
8C in the packet?
I could break it out, or I could put a note at the bottom, whatever you think would be.
Well, page 1 of
It's
12.
it's the minimal, Wells Fargo is very minimal, but we can definitely, and it hasn't changed because we haven't used those accounts. So we can present it at the top and do a summary, or we can do a note.
Well, I want to know if my card is out
Well,
clear.
My suggestion is we'll put a footnote at the bottom that puts the current balance in the Wells Fargo account. And then that way you don't have to separate it out, just go down through the table, but you'll be able to see exactly how much is in the Wells Fargo account.
Why don't we just close those out and move the money over to Bank of Marin?
We could do that. That would have to
To
be a
me, that would be
discussion.
the easiest and
Yeah,
safest, because we didn't know that money was there.
That'd have to be a discussion for you guys.
Another agenda, okay.
Yeah, and as background, I think it's worth spelling out for the public. Under the previous general manager, under the previous board, there was an intention to move accounts to Wells Fargo. And so some accounts were open and a little bit of money, this is prior to Greg, this is prior to me being on the board, were put in those accounts, just sort of like, we're going to do this. And then after the election of June 2012 and Mr. Richards' resignation, we stopped that. So that's why these accounts exist, and yet they have very little money in them, and they have not been active. So it's certainly, I think you're absolutely right, Pam, that it would be a good idea to just close these accounts. And if we wanted to have a discussion,
I don't want my name on the account.
and you were a signatory on it, is that right?
Right, I
Correct.
don't want it.
So
So I
that's,
could go in and take it out, or any board member on that card could take that money out,
Not quite correct. There's
Oh,
multiple
sorry.
signatures required.
so. It's all the bank.
But I think what I'm hearing is, I know that we can bring back an agendized item for the board's consideration.
That's easy.
to do that.
Yeah. So actually, Rick Richards is on that account as the legal
He's
authority.
not on the account. We have a new updated signature card that is currently.
He was on the account last
It's
month.
currently, well, as of last month, we sent an updated signature card, and it has the signers that were approved with the resolution. So it's the president, the treasurer, general manager, and the,
Okay. Just the comment for me is, for 2 years, Brett Richards was on that account as the person of authority to.
Is that for real?
All right, so I'll go to the public for comment on the consent calendar. Yes.
Hi, I just wanted to know on number F, the change order, is that project above or below cost at this point? The balance of the reimbursement for the Doherty Bridge
Greg,
pipeline.
can you respond to that?
Yes, I can.
8F,
I can
is
have
that
Randall address it.
District Engineer Ishii, the project is below the engineer's estimate and the agreed to amount with the city of Martinsburg by almost $7 million.
So, under budget, surprisingly.
I'd like to pull A and B for just a brief comment.
Okay. That, can you make that comment now? I think that's
No.
procedurally correct.
What are you pulling?
He wants to comment on A and B, so
The minutes from the previous meetings?
Right.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
As I stated last month, there have been some positive developments here at the district, but the lingering mismanagement still needs to be rectified. In the minutes of March 19 on page 12, a statement attributed to Director Silla misinforms the public when she states, President Silla remarked that she would say, one difference is that the district can actually show people what pipes it will fix and how it prioritizes.
Wait, what line are you
page 12
on? This way, okay.
12 in the packet.
Okay.
Yeah, 3/4 of the way down.
is,
And what goes on in that paragraph, and having been a community member at that point who attended the meeting, the leadership of the district at that time could not say this is what we're going to fix and why. And it changed. Up until the approval of the IMP, the district was operating under the 2007 CAP, capital program, and the downfall of this district was the poor implementation of this cap, the operational mismanagement and financial mismanagement, which has resulted in criminal action, and as we are aware, the former general manager awaiting trial in 9 felony counts. At the previous 218 public hearings, the district did point to concrete projects that were being undertaken. It just was very incompetent in carrying out this work. I'd like to point out that we have a consultant here who worked on the 2007 financial and cap plans. So I don't want to have the district keep misleading the public about that there was not a plan and there was not a priority. There was. It was just very poorly carried out. That's with regard to the minutes of 423. With regard to the minutes of March 26, I would like to commend the district for the first time in 6 years of correctly quoting me in the minutes without poor editing and censorship. I think this is a vast improvement. I also would like to point out that in the past 6 years, the district has never disproven anything I've had to say, which will be very important for this evening's meeting, dealing with the Larkspur landed property. And I am pleased that later on this evening, the district will be moving forward with an RFP for new legal representation. Those are my 2 comments.
Thank you. Any other public comment on the consent calendar? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to move the consent calendar.
Second.
second.
Second, May. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item number 9. Is Renee Goddard here to present? No? Okay.
And we've had some difficulty scheduling, so I'll take responsibility for that. I know she was unavailable last week, I think, for spring break and so on, but we'll continue to work on scheduling that. And she had a very timely presentation on improper disposal of items and so on in the wastewater systems. So we'll look for that and then
Continue it to the May meeting, presumably. Okay, thank you. Item number 10, consideration of a contract with RGS for human resource management through the end of fiscal year 14-15. Greg or Sophia?
Okay, I will start this off, and then so I'll hand it to Sophia, and we will be available to answer any questions. We do not have a separate presentation or anything for this. So first of all, just by way of very brief background, The district we had a discussion basically back in roughly July and August of 2013, at which we, I think, rightfully acknowledged that we were making a lot of progress in certain areas as a district. We were making significant progress towards the financial activities. We had just come off of reaching, I think we've come to recognize as a fairly reasonable and favorable set of conditions in the cease and desist order from the regulatory front. But we were continuing to really suffer as an organization from an ongoing series of acute human resources and staffing issues that had roots going way back in the district. Those activities they were costing the district, many hundreds of thousands of dollars between attorney's fees and settlements, and also just being very disruptive and corrosive to district staff and morale, and I think by extension certainly to our image in the community, because many of these were pretty well known about in the community. So we made the decision to look at options for professional human resources. We elected, rather than to hire a full-time permanent HR director, to contract with Regional Government Services on an initial approximately 10-month effort to come in and do three key things for the district. One was to help put out what I call some of the immediate acute problems that were going on, because we had a number of them. That was number one. Number two was to do a very in-depth, basically top-to-bottom review of the organization for all aspects of human resources management. And then number three was, based on that review and the findings and recommendations, to bring forth a plan for the district to move forward to put in place basically, long-term, sustainable professional human resource services for the organization. And for the folks, there's a fairly good audience here tonight. A lot of people, I'm sure, are not in the public sector, and some are in the private sector. HR services are very complicated. The laws are always changing. It's a complex world. And as a public agency, we were at the size and level that not having, professional, services was really starting to cost us. So the board supported the direction to do this interim contract with Regional Government Services. Their work really started in September of 2013, and they have been a very regular and constant, steady presence at the district ever since, working with all the different levels from the board all the way down to field crews, etc. And they have completed that work. They have helped put out all the immediate issues. They have completed the needs assessment, and they have presented or developed and are ready to present a plan for continuing to move forward and improving the district's human resources aspects. So what you have before you in the package this evening is a proposal to execute a new contract with RGS that will continue their services through the end of the new fiscal year, that being the 14-15 fiscal year that starts on July 1. And more importantly, or more specifically, puts in place the time and the resources and the scope to actually carry out the work plan that has been developed based on the last roughly 8 to 9 months of assessments and working with the district. So that is the action that is before the board this evening. And I'm going to stop there and ask Sophia Silvanoff, who has been our primary contact and done much of the heavy lifting along with some of her other staffs on the HR front, to speak further to this.
Thank you, Greg. Good evening. I'm Sophia Sullivan with Regional Government Services. We are a joint powers agency providing a range of administrative support resources to other public agencies, and it's been our pleasure and privilege to work with the Ross Valley staff from top to bottom since last September. And I wanted to just talk briefly about what we have learned in the time that we've been at Ross Valley. and I don't think that this is going to come as a big surprise to anybody in this room. Ross Valley is an organization that has had some challenges, and there are some real reasons for that. We discovered that there are confusing and inconsistent policies in place in the organization. We discovered that there is a lack of direct and formal communication systems. These are systemic issues that make it difficult for people to do their best work. They make it difficult for people to understand clearly what the expectations and the rules of the game are. We also discovered that employees had some lack of clarity about their roles and expectations. Things have changed a lot at the district in the last 10 years, and it hasn't always been clear to people what those changes mean for them. And finally, we discovered some fear and distrust. And again, unsurprising that people who've been through some of the experiences that the Ross Valley employees have been through would experience those emotions. We discovered some really great things too, though. We discovered that people are working very hard at Ross Valley. The employees of the district really are putting forth an effort to try to deliver good service to the community. We also discovered that they are hungry to have clearer policies, clearer expectations, clearer standards, and to do the right thing. They have been so responsive to all of the time that we've spent with them talking about what is the right thing to do here and how do we take steps to make that happen. They have a very strong desire to build better communication systems within their organization and with the community as well. And the board has shown outstanding leadership in bringing Greg Norby to be the general manager of the board. Greg has introduced and articulated for the organization a set of workplace values that include setting and working at high standards, that include accountability, that include doing the right thing, that include respecting and following channels of communication, and we really feel that this is a turning point for the district. So in light of the things that we've learned, we made a plan. And the plan is a team plan. This is not Regional Government Services is going to come in and do this. This is a plan that is going to engage everyone at Ross Valley, from the board all the way to the field crews. Everyone has a role here in carrying this out. Our goal is to build systems and capacity within the organization so that the people of Ross Valley understand how they work together most effectively, understand what is an appropriate, ethical, respectful, effective standard of workplace behavior. They understand how to work with the community and deliver services to the community. And the board is in a perfect position right now to continue that leadership and put out a message to the organization that they want to support this positive direction, that they believe that the employees of the organization can go a different way, the way that they've told us that they want to go, and become the premier wastewater collection district in the region. So I am very optimistic. I'm very hopeful that we can go there. The plan that we've put together, and that's what I want to focus on, because the past is the past, and we can't undo it, but we can move into the future, is in your packets, and it looks like this. It's attached to the end of the report that I provided to you. And it is a program of 6 projects, and our division of things into projects was a little bit arbitrary, but we looked at, what most needs to be accomplished that will best benefit the employees of the district in a very short amount of time. And so we have a project to develop performance management systems. We have a project to develop a much better package of administrative policies and systems. We have a project to develop a long-range staffing plan for the organization. We have a project to develop training plans. We have a project to prepare the district for labor negotiations in 2015. It has been 6 years since the district has been at the bargaining table. Much has changed. And it is not wise to go to the bargaining table without some plan of what it is that we want to accomplish in that dialogue with the employees of the Ross Valley Sanitary District. So we do have a plan to put together information that's important to that situation, present it to the board so that they understand what the actual picture of employment in Ross Valley and the costs of those things are, and where we're going to go with that will be something that they can decide with real information in their hands. And then we have a project that I'm calling strategic planning issues. We do not have a full strategic plan accomplished at Ross Valley, but the general manager had a couple of strategic planning workshops with the employees of the district and asked them to talk about their needs and desires, things that they felt would be important to have in the district. And they expressed a number of things that I can't do anything about because they're operational, but they also expressed some things that fitted very nicely into the human resource management plans that we were making. And I felt it was important to include those and develop some things that were expressed by the employees as needs. So they talked about better channels of communication between management and line-level employees. Perfect, we want to have that. They talked about succession planning. We want to have that too. They talked about having a better set of standard operating procedures. Well, we're working on administrative policy clarity. It makes sense to roll that down to the procedural level, so that's something that we've incorporated in here. Now, we're not going to write this for these folks. They're going to be part of the project. We're going to facilitate how that happens and keep it on track, and we're going to do it as a team. So you will see that we have listed out activities sequentially, month by month, through the whole year. That's 12 months worth of work. It is a very ambitious plan. And the plan ends in December. The contract we're talking about doesn't end until June. Part of that is because, ambitious as this is, I'm not the only player here. We are going to be talking to a lot of employees and engaging a lot of folks, and they have a lot of other things to do besides work this plan with me. The labor union is going to be a key player in many of these discussions, and I'm going to have to share their business agent's time with all the other people he represents. So I anticipate we might run a little past in December, but we wanted to try to capture something that, can we do this in 12 months? And if we can, have we improved the human resource management system at the district and set a pathway for the employees of the district that will serve them well and empower them all to do an outstanding job? And I think the answer is yes.
Great, thank you. Board members, do you have any questions?
Very nice.
Very nice presentation.
Thank you.
I would say,
One moment, Dan.
one thing I would have pointed out that the HR subcommittee highlighted was that in looking at our benefits recently, they saved us $26,000 and actually gave our employees a better benefit package than it did previously by adding a little travel insurance. So proactive human resource management, although we know it and we've experienced it in terms of legal expenses declining, also just on an average day can save you some money. So I'm grateful for that. That is true. That is true.
Yes. No, the benefit was changed for all employees. It's a life insurance benefit. We consolidated providers and saved $26,000 ongoing every year for doing that. And it's exactly the same level of benefit.
So we cut it?
No, same level of benefit.
Oh. Good.
You just shop around a little, you get a better deal.
Oh, I see, I see. So I'm just wondering, budget-wise, we haven't done our next budget. So I'm kind of curious, I haven't seen this before, it's an item coming before the budget for $225,000. It's kind of strange, it's kind of a force for department. So how did that sort of happen?
Well, that's a good point, or a good question, and we actually talked about that yesterday. So the district has a lot, I mean, we have a whole host of ongoing activity. We have capital projects, we have studies. So my point is, we have ongoing business that does or can result in incurring commitments and future costs. There's no question about that. So we don't typically freeze decision-making on anything like this until we actually have a budget. However, on the other hand, by getting direction and ideally setting this in motion, we will then have this information to inform the development of the draft budget, which is actually in progress. The board will be seeing the draft budget in May for your first consideration, because typically you'll be adopting it or approving it in June ahead of the start of the new fiscal year. So that you are correct. There is no firm budget decisions made yet behind this. It is, however, to put that in context, we are roughly, if you take, you know, the recent year as an indicator, we're probably looking at somewhere between, you know, a $25 to $30 million budget in the upcoming fiscal year. The $225,000 for the human resources expenditures would be an outstanding investment, in my view, for the district. And to put that in context, if you look at the monthly legal services report, it has running 12-month totals of legal expenditures by various activities. And even though we have been trending down and putting out a lot of these fires, we just in the past 12 months managed to spend slightly north of $200,000 just on legal fees related to personnel services. And that is money for which we got no forward-looking constructive building value. We just put out fires. So to put the $225,000 in context, those are some ways, I guess, to look at it. And the last item, or the last point I would make on that is, as Sophia alluded to in the work plan, the district is, you know, depending on when you want to assume we start, we're basically, you know, 6 to 7 months out from the beginning of one of the most important financial decisions we'll be making in the next few years, which is the labor negotiations. And I think everyone in this who's familiar with the results of our last labor negotiations understands how incredibly important those processes are. So this is our opportunity to gather information, put in place, you know, strategies, and begin working towards a successful, hopefully, successful negotiation for what will be setting some very important long-term financial direction for the district, which is our, you know, the labor negotiation. So that's I tend to basically characterize this as an investment in prevention, capacity building, and information development for some of those key decisions coming down the road.
I'm not questioning the figure, I'm questioning the process. When I first asked that question, because we don't usually adopt something when we don't have a budget in front of us. That I mean, we can, but we're saying we're going to approve $225,000, but we don't have a budget in front of us to say, do we really have the money? Where would the money? Where would that money come from? This is a more than double from what we've had in HR. And I totally hear all the upcoming things. I'm totally in favor of HR. There's been a new world since they've come on board. We have a lot more than a lot more work to do. And I know about negotiations, and they can be long and tedious. So I'm just wondering how we can, should we just continue it until May when we get the budget, or I mean, I'm just kind of curious how we can proceed without, then there'll be other things that come up, you know, that's all I'm.
Yeah, no, I guess
I don't know how to pay for it.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I'm totally in favor of this. I'm on that track, it's just the process.
Well, I don't have it, I mean, this is, very briefly, we are still incurring commitments, and you'll be continuing to see items that incur commitments that do presume that the financial resources within reason will be there. This particular one, if you're looking at it from a contractual term, it has a 30-day termination notice. But for some reason we decided that, gosh, we just really can't afford this, and we need to do other things with this money, we would simply terminate the contract. But I don't have a good answer. I understand your
That's not
point
my
there.
issue. My
Yeah.
issue is just bringing projects or items to us without a budget.
Would it be
And
possible?
so can you, if you need to know sooner than our budget, can you wait?
Well,
Is there
as you
an
see,
issue of
this
time?
calendar started in January, and we have initiated many of these activities. There is a ramp up in the second quarter of the level of things that we need to do, and that means that we're going to spend more time than we have in the last 9 months working on things for Ross Valley. You know, it's one thing for us to come in one day a week and meet people and talk to people and help them solve their problems and read the policies. When we have to write those policies new and meet and confer with the bargaining unit over those, that is an increase in time. And
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not where I'm going. with this,
But what I'm
because
saying
our
is I don't
budget-
want to stop because
Yeah.
we can't afford that increase in time in the second quarter of the year if we don't increase our contract. The contract that we initially signed isn't big enough to do the work in this plan.
Because our budget won't be ready until July 1st.
So the contract, I think, expires June
Well-
2014.
Well, can I just jump in real quick?
Yeah.
So the proposed contract speaks to a term of a full year from the signing of it. At the same time, the out language is the 30-day period where if we do get in a plan, I mean, Mary already said it. So my thinking is of course, it sounds like we're all interested as a board to make this move forward as far as I can tell. We still have the ability to have an out. It's written into the contract. We covered this a bit yesterday, and we thought maybe the basically doubling of what we're spending would probably raise some questions. So I think it was a good suggestion by Director Silla that it was really the contract language that freed us up from long-term challenges if it is financial.
But I also really, I do hear what you're saying, Dan,
Right.
which is that we're obligating
Should be
ourselves for the
budgeted.
entire fiscal year 14-15, when aren't we a month out maybe from having a closer idea? When will we approve the 14-15?
You'll see a draft budget at the May board meeting? Yeah, yeah.
So to meet, to meet that concern, would it be possible to do something that is what was the term of the contract that is just ending and when is it ending?
I believe the staff report says that the contract runs through June 2014.
It runs through June 30th of 2014, and it also has a not to exceed amount that if we are
We're
going
bumping
to
up.
perform the work in the second quarter that's in the plan, which is a larger body of work than was in the first quarter, the 100,000 is not going to get us there.
Right.
So that's why in the current contract, the start date is today, going all the way through June 30th of 2015.
But we have an active contract now, we're just gonna bump up against the not to exceed.
Right.
All right. Go ahead.
Sure. It's an interesting proposal. So we've had kind of a mess here with our personnel issues. And how did we get there? Well, we grew too big, too fast. We increased our employees, total employees, by 50% in 3.5 years.
How do you do here?
We've gone through terminations, a lot of terminations, employee appeals, challenges, disciplines, and at least one lawsuit for wrongful termination is still going on right now. And so we've spent, as Greg said, what was the number, 240?
A little over 200.
A little over $200,000 so far in legal, trying to properly administer these claims. What it looks like we're going to do is we're going to shift the cost of personnel from legal to HR. I thought with the $100,000 contract with HR services that we were going to reduce the legal costs, and then in the future, there'd be that savings, but this would be about $125,000 increase over the current year. On page 3 of the report, it mentions Ross Valley has experienced a number of significant organizational changes in the past several years, including turnover at the general manager level, changes in the composition of the management team, realignment, et cetera, et cetera. Only one change, since the general manager position. The previous general manager left, and we have a new general manager. Other than that, everything else is pretty much the same. So it looks like from the financial report, we'll probably spend about $125,000 this year for this contract. I was trying to extrapolate the year-end expenditures for HR service, about $125,000. This proposal here is for $225,000, which means over a 2 years period, we'll spend $340,000 $350,000. At what point does this agency decide the expenditure is such that we need to put out a request for proposals to see if there are other HR firms out there that might perform the same level of services for less money? You know, it's our job to pay various money. I'm very pleased with the work that's been done. And so I'm just, for myself, one board member, I'm asking myself this question.
Can we let Sophia respond to the, because there was some discussion at the HR subcommittee that I'd like to share with the board.
Okay, let me just finish. So, yeah, the idea of, we put in a not to exceed figure in a contract before, and we found out not to exceed figure really meant nothing much. We've run into this problem. And so, you know, not to exceed doesn't really mean that much. I'd like, you know, we know they're on site at least one day a week. I'd like to know how many hours are spent now, and then what is the projection? How many hours do we expect to spend in this next year? We've got a breakdown of what the costs are, but we really don't have a breakdown as to how much time they're really going to be here. You know, we know one day a week, and we know they do work off-site, but I think there has to be more information to the board to make that decision.
So I can speak to what is involved in that $225,000. Presently, Annie Kavanaugh, who is my associate that works with me on this contract, is spending about 22 hours a week on average working for the sanitary district. I am spending about 10 hours a week on average working for the sanitary district. My anticipation, in order to keep these projects moving forward somewhere close to the timelines that we've projected for them, is that Annie will need to bump up to 26 hours a week on average. I will need to bump up to 16 hours a week on average. And I have also built into the figure some off-site policy writing work by a lower-priced member of our team who will focus solely on getting some of the key policies written and back to us without being distracted by any of the day-to-day fires that come up when we are dealing with the employees of the district. So that person's going to be at arm's length and focused purely on policy writing. And I've got 160 hours, which is 4 weeks worth of work for policy writing in there, and that will get us some key policies. It will not get us the whole suite of policies that we need, but will get us started with some critical things. In addition, with regard to the labor negotiations preparation, I've added 12 hours a month of my time, specifically focusing on understanding the personnel costs of the organization and understanding the current and ever-changing state of benefit costs, benefit laws like the Affordable Care Act, the CalPERS system and the costs that they have, always changing, and the rules are always changing about who gets retirements and who does not, and making sure that we have a really solid set of information in place for that particular process. So that is what's included in the $225,000.
Is it 12 hours a month, you said?
Yes.
So you would move up to 28 hours a month total? You said 16?
16 a week for my time in the
16 a week.
more organizationally engaged things. You know, I anticipate doing the meet and confer with the employee association over policies, and certainly working with the managers and affected employees on what the contents of those policies are. So that is going to be that time.
Okay, and the 12 hours is a month?
Yes. That's
And
off-site thinking quietly about these complex
And
things.
the Annie Kavanaugh is 26 hours a week?
Yes.
And this other person is on here, this Ann Oliver. Well, what is her role, and will she be using hours as well?
Ann is not a regular feature of our team. We put her in our contracts. She is an organizational development specialist, and we find that if we include her and people wish to use her services, and it is something that we would say, you know, Greg, we think you have a complex problem here between these employees that needs someone to facilitate and mediate that conversation. Would you like Ann to come in and do that? He might say yes, or he might say no, but that's entirely up to him. We simply include her so that we don't have to write some separate amendment.
So I want to throw this out there, being that I've been a union nurse for 30 years. And I've been through negotiations. I've seen both sides. Usually, you know, on the union side, but these things with whatever person is negotiating can make it or break it.
Absolutely.
And I'm not sure what the experience is from your organization and yourself, or who's going to be doing those negotiations. So that's another thing that sort of popped up as you've been talking. So
My
I don't know how other
anticipation-
board members feel about this, but Frank.
I'm not finished.
Oh,
Well, you're finished.
My
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know, she was
May I
trying to answer
speak
some
to
of my
that?
questions.
I'm
I've got
sorry.
more.
May I speak to that? My anticipation is that the district will make an independent decision on retaining a chief labor negotiator, and it will not be someone from regional government services.
so we'll have to pay separately and negotiate.
That is a specialty skill. It's a challenge to find the right labor negotiator, and that person needs to be a person you have a great relationship and complete confidence in. My work with this is really analytic work, getting my arms around what are the facts of the situation so that you have good information.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. So, this board is going to have to make a decision sometime in this next 6 months to get on board labor negotiator for the district. Since we haven't done it for 6 years, we've never talked about it since I've been on the board, because it's a 6-year contract. So we're going to have to look at some opportunities here. I sit on a couple other district boards, and they also are going through labor negotiations right now. And I see they've hired firms to handle labor negotiations. CMSA is one, Marin, some mosquito vector control district is another. They both hired similar type firms to handle labor negotiations. So that's a decision the board's going to have to make. I guess you're going to come back with a recommendation sometime in the next 4 to 6 months, probably, that will get us into that move.
We did talk about this in our meeting yesterday.
It's in the plan.
So as far as consultants, we'll be spending in the neighborhood of about $2 million over a period of about a year with design work, project management, inspections, and HR services. So we're spending a lot of money on consultants. And at some point, I'm hoping with the large amount of employees we have that we're going to be able to do some of this work in-house and not have contractors in a lot of consultants.
Frank,
Yes.
I don't want to interrupt you, but.
No, that's good. Yeah,
You know, we discussed the long-term solution, which is, it is down the road. But I came out of yesterday's meeting in our HR committee, knowing that part of the plan was to make it so we wouldn't have to be dependent on consultants forever. But there's some deep work that needs to be done to get to that point. I don't foresee RGS providing services to the district indefinitely. In fact, the HR function could be a part of in-house services, but that really needs to be assessed quite carefully. And we certainly are not in any position right now to be providing that service in-house under our current organizational model. That's why we've gone out to a firm that specializes in that. The part of it is the setting the foundation.
And if I can expand on that, it is our intention to build capacity. Having good policies and procedures, training people in the organization on them means that, first of all, employees know what they're supposed to do, and I believe the employees have good intentions and will do it. And secondly, when they don't, the supervisors will have the capability to correct that behavior promptly before it becomes a big problem. So the capacity building is an up curve, and we're in an up curve. I expect we're going to get to the other side of this, and we'll be in a maintenance place. You will still need someone to bring HR matters to, because they do reach a stage of complexity. Sometimes that advice is needed. But you will not need as much time from me or Annie, or an in-house person if that's the road you decide to go down, when you are in a maintenance place and the system is well designed and everybody is trained in it.
Okay, question on RFP. Is that something that we need to address?
Pardon me?
An RFP, is it something that we need to address
a request for proposals for continuing what we're doing right now?
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like changing horses in midstream a little bit.
But I mean, are we obligated?
I think it's a discussion the board needs to have. I'm not saying we need to do it, but I'm saying
We
it's
should just continue.
a discussion we need to have before we approve this.
Talk about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I feel more comfortable with continuance for next month.
Well, just to be clear, the continuance, we will basically end services due unless there's at least an amendment to the financial resources for the contract. So, because they are already bumping up against the not to exceed amount. We did explore, when we first started this, we talked to 3 different private firms that provide this type of service. There was really no, I mean, the quality and the reputation that we were able to get from local governments right here in Marin as to the quality of the service that RGS provides made that choice pretty clear. And I will say emphatically this evening that they have proven to be absolutely equal and exceeding the reputation that they brought with them. They have established very strong, very constructive working relationships throughout the organization. And I would just suggest to keep in mind that that is not something that you will just sort of switch in and out like a spare part. The cost competitiveness issue for sure is very important. One of the things that we're trying to emphasize here is that this is meant to be essentially a flexible, team-based approach to bringing these services in. So it's not a fixed structural cost. They will tap resources as they need them to meet specific needs of the district. So whether it's training, whether it's labor negotiations, and so forth. So as opposed to, for example, having a permanent full-time HR person, which is your fixed overhead. And the last thing I would say is in terms of comparison of what we've been spending, it is absolutely the intent that this is a capacity building investment that goes on for a year or so, and after that, this level of resources is no longer necessary because we now have up-to-date, understandable, cohesive policies. We have effective supervisory training and personnel skills up and down the organizational chain. So this is meant to be a preventative, capacity building investment for the district. It's not meant to be something that goes on and on. The firms that we spoke with, they're all very good in their own right, but there was a number of factors that went into the selection of RGS, and my suggestion is if we went back out, we'd be talking to those same 3 firms. This isn't the most widely provided service in the world. When you talk about outside contracted HR for public agencies, it's a fairly narrow playing field. So my recommendation, I guess, to be clear, is we, at a minimum, would be to make sure we have financial resources to continue their services into the new fiscal year, if that's something the board would like to do. If it makes it, provide some, resolves issues with the status of our upcoming budget. But I would really caution going out for a new RFP. From what we saw, I think it's quite likely we'll end up back where we are. I mean, that's obviously speculative.
So it was 125, that'd be about 125 this year, 225 next year. What's the third year going to look like?
Third year should start to go down, Frank, if this is successful.
Well, perhaps at the next meeting, we bring back an interim contract to extend this one for say another additional, I don't know, what do they need?
July 1st.
No, take it into 3 months, an additional 3 months, just to make sure that they know there's some stability here, and that the board is going to be making this decision through the budget process, it seems.
Yeah,
Well, your new budget will be, you'll be adopting your new budget in June.
And I mean,
I'd say July, run it through September 30th, bring in an interim extension of this contract.
and I,
Let the board, it seems reasonable.
Could I ask one more question? What I'm a little concerned about is, the level of hours needed that our GS will need preparing for, policies that need to be written and implemented, or written, trained into staff, and then implemented. Of course, ratified by the board. And then, of course, preparation for union negotiations. Will we be able to, I guess what I'm saying is the shorter the term of the contract, you're going to need more hours no matter what.
Well, if you want everything done in a shorter amount of time, I don't honestly think I have the resources to accomplish that. There is a method to the madness of putting this across the year.
I don't
have an infinite team.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, let's continue with the contract we have to an additional 3 months, when the board goes through its budget process, discusses this issue. The alternative is to what? To approve it tonight. I mean.
Yeah, okay, so maybe we'll have something to vote on in a month, or you want to put it all the way off into September?
No. I'm saying for the next meeting, bring back a contract extension for 3 months. We'll take this through September 30th. At the same time, the board's going to be looking at a budget. They're going to be looking at how it's going to fund it, et cetera, et cetera. That kind of addresses Pam's concern that we're spending the money before we look at our budget, building expectations.
And also to, like you were talking about these hours, I think that should be part of your budget, to show your budget, like so many hours you think, because that was not in, it was just a flat fee of $225,000.
Yeah, I'm happy to show how
That
I
would
arrived
be
at
great.
that not to exceed
That
amount.
would be really good. Thank
Certainly.
you.
And are we going to bump up against the not to exceed
Yes.
between now and the next meeting?
Yes, can I make a suggestion? If the board were, if you were okay, what I'm trying to avoid is a full other board cycle just because of that issue and the amount of activity we have going on. We have meetings scheduled with union representatives next week and so forth. If you could authorize, my suggestion would be to authorize a simple amendment to the contract that does nothing more than say it adds, I'm just suggesting a number not to exceed, add $45,000 to the contract, and that would give us plenty to keep things moving, and that would take us through at least the end of June. By that point, you would be well into the budget process, and then we'll just, and that's just from the burn rate of, we're running about 10 to 15,000 a month right now. So if we're okay to just simply do a bare bones amendment, that amended the not to exceed amount, and authorize the general manager to execute that, that's what I could do. And that way it doesn't have to come back. Not that obviously.
Yeah, that sounds fine.
And what's the amount? Sorry.
I would suggest 45,000.
So it's just going to be a
Is it
simple.
45
amendment.
over 125 or?
Over the 100. Frank.
45 over 100.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see if-
Daniel, let's go out to the public. Does the public have any comment on this item? Talked a lot about it. Yes.
Rick Collin, Fairfax. Director Meggs is right. To deciding essentially to go out of the RFP, you're determining a line item in the budget as of this evening. And Frank's discussion, I think, was you're on it. There should be a motion of which direction to go. For those of us coming onto the board in July, whoever we may be, these are important issues, and so it would be good to have a time frame to adjust. What I would like to say is that congratulations again. This is a vast improvement, and I think it's the right direction by subcontracting right now, somebody that can move this work forward. After 6 years of horrendous hiring of personnel choices and policies, you can see a little light. So, the district is moving in the right direction. I guess we can all look forward to a new board after July without any of the former members of the board that brought us into this disastrous situation. So, and just to move this forward, a few months and bring it into the budget process would probably be a better discussion.
Jean Selvas, live in Larkspur. I'm just curious how many employees you have qualified?
38.
38.
I'm sorry, I heard you ask that question earlier.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
I interrupted you. I thought someone might be able to fill me in
HR on this level, but I appreciate that you're looking at the bigger issues to avoid further legal fees in this. And it sounds like the company that you've chosen, from what Kurt is saying, is a good one, and I encourage you to continue with it in a nutshell. Thank you for your consideration.
First of all, concerning the union negotiations that are going to be coming up.
Excuse me, sir, can we just get your name and town one more time for the note taker? I know, you're Clayton Smith from Mill Valley.
Correct. All right. This has been a topic with an organization I belong to up north in Sonoma, the Sonoma County Taxpayer Associations, that they're quite concerned up there at the explosive growth of employment costs up there. And in fact, if you were to look at the average cost of employment in that county for relevant services from the public to the private sector, you find that the public sector is being paid 50, 60, 70% higher than comparable salaries in the private sector. An explosive growth in public sector compensation, and not including, of course, the intangible benefit of the impeccable job security that generally goes along with public sector employment, which is completely absent in the current economy in the private sector today. Two things have come up with this. One thing is the union that now seems to have taken over negotiations up in Sonoma, the Teamsters Union, has become the main bargaining agent for the government employees up there. My question, of course, is whether or not that's actually going to be the case here. Secondly, one of the reasons that we have this excessive pay for government employees is that when the employment negotiations come up, the comparables are from government to government versus a more general economic comparison across the entire board of the economy, including the private sector. And what has happened is we've had this endless ratcheting up over the years of government employment costs. And this is now leading to the bankruptcy of, well, I know that the city up there in Santa Rosa is pretty much in the toilet as far as finances for the foreseeable future. And so they're having to reduce employment, reduce services across the board in that particular area. So what I'd like to see is perhaps some discussion in the board in the future, and maybe even these people could begin looking at this injustice, economic injustice in our society, where the government workers are absolutely rising to a point of privilege while grinding down the taxpayers who have to pay these things. And so that's an item I think should be brought forward. I hope these people would do it. And I would like to have them actually come back. It would be interesting if they would break out what their hourly compensation is. And the third thing is...
Mr. Smith, I'm going to ask you to wrap it up.
Wrap it up, is the question concerning the solvency of your pension plan. What is your unfunded pension liability? And how is this going to be addressed in the global look at your HR systems so that the taxpayers aren't left without poor services or new increases in rates?
Thank you, sir. All right.
Robert Miltner, Larkspur. This is a lot simpler question. It seems, are we reinventing the wheel with this procedure? There are 11 other sanitation districts. None of them have HR programs? None of them have operating manuals for this department? Is this such an unusual district that it can't share something that happens in the very same...
I guess I would defer to Sophia to also explain what regional
What
government
makes this such a
services does.
unique environment
And
that
it
you
is
have
an
to have your
effect
own
share.
procedures?
Oh, pardon me, sir.
Yeah.
regional government services actually contracts with governmental entities, including sanitary districts. Did you have another sanitary district?
I don't know that we have another one at this moment,
They
no.
provide services to the city of Larkspur. I mean, I think in terms of economies of scale that you're going after, we are getting that with
So,
also people.
we are a public agency. Our contractual arrangement with other public agencies says we're open source. We share information, we borrow information from other public agencies. The unique piece of fitting any bit of policy to a given organization is the bargain labor contract, more than anything else, because a bargain labor contract is unique to that agency, and the policies and procedures of the organization do need to take that into account. So of course there are general practices that are best practices for the industry. We will not reinvent those wheels, believe me, we're going to borrow them from everybody who's got a good policy out there.
I think, I'm going to jump in for it, sir. I think what I heard the gentleman, great name, sir?
Yeah, Robert.
Robert, I think what he was really driving at is sharing of services, HR being one of them, in more of a collective sense.
Well, these are manuals. I mean, I've written quality assurance manuals. You surely have operational manuals in your engineering and operations department. Those have not been neglected, or the whole system wouldn't be working like it does. So, I mean, for 38 employees, a unique operating manual for your HR department seems unusual. You're not going to ever hire an HR manager. You know,
Oh, I don't know.
who's going to implement the
HR
procedures?
Yeah, well, we used to have an HR function here long ago, and it went off the radar from 2000 forward.
Yeah, maybe
So-
purposely too, by the way. I mean, on the part, because that makes it easier not to communicate what's
Well,
happening.
it also creates some real problems, because policies weren't very well refined. And they certainly weren't moving in lockstep with the changes in the last 10 or, well, 16 years, or whatever. But the point is we're trying to get back on task right now. So maybe I'm not understanding your question clearly, but perhaps you're saying there's other policies already created that are fitting other.
Why wouldn't it be very similar to another one of the sanitation districts with
Right.
similar number of employees?
Now I'm going to let Sophia come back.
I'm sure there's a good reason why it isn't, but it seems to a guy that's just like sitting here, for 38 people, that's 300 grand I'm going to spend in about 2 or 3 years here.
Right. So Sophia, could you elaborate on that now?
Well, I don't think every aspect of policy that we're going to have in Ross Valley will be unique to Ross Valley, nor do I think I'm going to craft, or any other RGS staff persons are going to craft every word. I mean, we do, it's in the public domain what public agencies do, and we borrow heavily from those who have a well-designed system. But we do also need to adapt it to some of the unique cultural and labor-related aspects of the Ross Valley situation.
I'm not convinced somehow.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not, you're entitled to your career, but I'm just saying that I've written manuals for very large manufacturing systems, and a lot of it's already in a,
In a direct response to your question,
Yeah.
Before we hired this firm, these consultants, I asked, and the board agreed, and the manager talked to the county of Marin and the city of Santa Fe to see if they could share an HR person with us. It was, we thought, I thought, and the board agreed that might be an opportunity for us to share an HR person with the county of Marin, with the city of Santa Fe. And they both advised us that they didn't have spare hours in their HR department to share with us. But we actually looked at it. Greg, that's.
Yeah, actually, specifically, I don't think I contacted Santa Fe, but we definitely had discussions with, well, because we assumed that the Marin County being such a large public agency might have, and in our relatively modest numbers, could we basically plug into their system, so to speak. And long story short is, yeah, we had those discussions, and it was, their determination was that really wasn't a good fit. They didn't have the spare capacity to help us out, given their 2,000 employees or whatever it was they already handled. So, yeah, we did. I do think that's a very important point. We have tried to look at the most flexible and efficient ways to provide these services, and we've been open to ideas. We talked to 3 different private agencies, private parties. We did explore local government partnerships. And I think relative to the traditional model of going and hiring a full-time permanent HR manager, which is what you see at many agencies, we clearly decided that was not the most efficient solution. So we have one now. It's in progress, obviously, but it's very flexible, it's very scalable, it's very adjustable. It's not rigid. And so as the needs change and we get a better idea what we do or don't need to do, RGS has been, they are able to adopt. If we need less, they will do less. If we get manuals done for half the effort than we expected, they're not going to charge us for the full effort to get the manuals done. But, so my key point there is really, I think, what we're trying to do differently as a public agency, which I do think is notable in my limited experience, is we aren't trying to take a boilerplate, one-size-fits-all approach. We are trying to keep it, what I would call flexible, scalable to our specific needs. That's why we emphasize the team approach. Bring in the resources you need, use them while you need them. When you don't need them, they're gone. So if we need labor negotiations, bring them in. When we don't need them, they're gone. If we need policy writing assistance, you bring it in. When you're done writing policies, that resource moves on. So those are the kind of efficiencies and characteristics that we're looking for. So I think, anyway, that hopefully characterizes it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Kathleen Mulcahy, Larkspur. I feel similar to Pam in that I've sat on both sides of the house. I was a consultant with our rangers in 30 years, and now in a school district union. So I too have seen both sides of the house, and I respect Pam for drilling down into the details in regards to the level in which your ratings are and the hours expected, so that could be managed by yourself, Greg, to keep that in check. Without it, you're just opening yourself up for non-accountability in regards to your deliverables. On the union side, and I can speak to this gentleman back here, we do a number of sharing of resources because, and it might not be necessarily in the small range that Frankie talked about. It could be over in Palo Alto or what have you. But you can look at other districts in regards to the sanitary area and in a union manner do some comparing of policies and procedures and getting printouts and sharing that, and then seeing from others' work where you want to tailor and tune and focus on. And that might cut out some of your need for resources, because a lot of what I'm hearing being provided is consulting. Thank you.
Miles O'Dwyer, Larkspur, and listening to the discussion, I'm kind of amazed that the board isn't begging to be signing this contract. I believe many of the members here in the audience regard the human resources policies and the administration of the staff that is the Ross Valley Sanitary District has not been a superior quality organization in the past. This looks to be an excellent opportunity to bring it up to speed and has already seen the benefits and legal fees from the work that has gone on so far. So that the contract, which has a cap on it, that you can stop on 30 days notice, should be absolutely comprehended, in my opinion, within the next budget. And I would be expecting you to be directing the general manager to say, you squeeze it in, no matter what else has to go out. That's my opinion.
Seeing no one else in the public, I'll bring it back to the board. I think that we had gotten to a point of agreement
If the
among
motion's in
members.
order, I would so move that authorize the general manager to sign an extended contract through September 30th at a cost not to exceed $45,000 over the current contract. Is that?
It would be, I believe it would be a contract amendment to the existing contract that would just, it would be a not to exceed, and then all other terms and conditions of the original agreement would be in place.
Yeah, 3-month extension.
An amendment of the current contract, increasing not to exceed.
Yeah, it would just be like a one-page amendment.
Okay. And a friendly amendment to bring back to the budget to include them. come back to the budget.
So the draft budget will reflect, yeah, the whole.
But I
Include them in
still-
the draft budget so you can see the line. item.
Right. Thank
Okay,
you.
very good.
All right, is that
That's fine.
legally
Accept it.
comprehensible? Okay, so we'll have to. Egger moved, second.
Who seconded it?
I'll second.
Wasco. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. On to item number, oh, okay, let's take a brief break.
Are you okay with the break?
You probably need a break.
I mean, if you
It's
don't,
late.
let's keep going.
It's late.
Let's
Let's-
keep going.
Let's move on to item 15, which we are moving up on the agenda, which we moved up on the agenda. Discussion of district review and comment on the draft EIR for the City of Larkspur Station Area Plan. Greg, do you want to provide us some staff?
I will do a real brief introduction to this. I know there's a lot of interest, and I suspect that's where a lot of the people are here this evening. So the city of Marksburg has circulated out a draft environmental impact report required by under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. The draft EAR specifically deals with the project defined as the station area plan. I won't attempt to summarize the station area plan. The district has two very direct connections to this topic. One is we are the provider of wastewater utility service to the area which the proposed plan is addressing, and we are also the district is the owner of one of the 3 or 4 key parcels in the study area within which per the plan's projections and assumptions, ideally per the plan where much of the future development would take place. So the district is in the process of preparing comments to be submitted by the Ross Valley Sanitary District to the lead agency, which is the City of Larkspur, for this CEQA document. And to that end, there was the district has a standing committee of it has a rather lengthy name, but I'll just call it the Larkspur Landing Property Committee. That committee met last week. It was a very well-attended meeting with extensive public comment. Really what we're looking for this evening is an outcome of this when everything settles here, is we are looking for direction from the board as to the crafting and the content of the comment letter that would be coming from the Ross Valley Sanitary District to the lead agency, again, to the City of Larkspur in response to the draft EIR. Staff has reviewed the draft EIR document. We had just a few fairly straightforward comments that we'll be recommending for inclusion. We have purposely, in the staff report, as has been noted, we're not attempting to get into the long and convoluted history of the site itself, but are limiting our comments to the action in front of the district through the CEQA process. You have in front of you I think the first 2 chapters. I just put them in there for your easy reference of the draft EIR. The document itself is, I think, north of 400 and odd pages, not counting some of the technical appendices. And you also have a summary of just a high-level summary from Director Eggers of the Larkspur Landing Committee meeting from last week. So we are, again, I think if I understand the basic outcome this evening is to provide direction to how the district wants to complete ultimately its comments on the draft EIR. And I'll hand it back to the board.
And when is that letter due?
Thank you. I should have mentioned that. The deadline is June 2nd for submission of written comments to the City of Larkspur.
So that there's another board meeting between
Yes.
now and then at this body. Okay.
And I want to add that we could ask for an extension.
Board members, comments, questions for staff about this?
Well, comment, if I may, comments. Pam and I were the two board members that held the hearing last week. It was actually a full house. Folks were sitting on the floor and standing in the back. So the issues that Ross Valley Sanitary District is concerned about are two. One is the capacity of our system and the ability of the Ross Valley Sanitary District to handle additional growth and development. How many units? What's our issues with dry weather flow versus wet weather flow? Do we have the pumping capacity? We're under a cease and desist order from State Water Board, so we're probably the only sanitary district in Marin County of the 11 that's under a state-ordered cease and desist order to correct the problems with its pipes. So we've got issues that we're trying to grapple with, and at the same time, we're faced with a proposal such as a station area plan, and we have to provide the services to whatever is going to occur, when it occurs. And so when we're talking about capacity, it's just not the station area plan. We've got the town of San Anselmo, the town of Fairfax, we've got Ross, we've got the unincorporated areas, Greenbrae, Kentfield, Kent Woodlands, unincorporated Fairfax, et cetera, where growth is going to occur. So when we're talking capacity, we're looking at our whole system, not just this little piece of Larkspur in the stationary plan. And the other issue is the public property that's owned, the roughly 10 acres that's owned down there in Larkspur Ranch, 2,000 Larkspur Ranch. So, it was on a contract for sale, and now it's back in full control of the Ross Valley Sanitary District. We've spent money over the years. We spent legal funds, probably well over $2 million in protracted litigation. We settled a 4.75 million, an out-of-court settlement over toxic issue on the site. And so we as a board, we have not addressed our next step in the land. We haven't, this is the first time that this committee has met to discuss the land, which had happened to we had an approved plan for 126 dwelling units on roughly those 6 acres, and a hotel, and then office space, and possibly bring in this Ross Valley Sanitary District headquarters back from Santa Fe into the district here in Marshfield. And then there was a proposed amendment to that plan that was filed by the district, unbeknownst to the district board members, and we made an official withdrawal. The city of Larkspur had our application on file to increase the density to up to about 300 units. And unbeknownst to the board, in fact, we weren't really aware of it. When we found out about it is when we started attending a couple of station area preliminary hearings over at Greenbrae, at the restaurant over there.
Jason.
Yeah, Jason. So,
This was
some years
ago?
No. This is a year and a half ago at the most.
No,
A year?
not that long.
Not even that year. No, less than a year ago. Our counsel, our attorney, was going through some records at City of Larkspur Planning Department and found this amendment that we had filed for, unbeknownst to most of us. We didn't know we had filed for an amendment. And so we acted, and what was that, 6 months ago? When did we act? We actually officially withdrew that request from Ross Valley Sanitary. That's, we had never really made it. We withdrew the request of Larkspur. They refunded our deposit that we had made. And so where it stands now is we own the land. There have been a number of inquiries from folks who are interested in possibly purchasing it. And we as a board have to take a look at the issues, take a look at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's issues with some of the solids, the PCBs, but the solids that were buried on that site. We've got to figure out if we're gonna sell it, or if we're gonna lease it, or whatever. I mean, we have a broad range of issues to deal with as a board, not counting the stationary plan. So, but tonight, we're gonna try to address the city of Larkspur and comment on the draft environmental impact report. So we're gonna talk about those kinds of things. We're gonna make it known to the city of Larkspur that we haven't, we as a board have not made a decision yet as to the potential end result of what's gonna occur down here. And we need to address the capacity issue. There's been talk about traffic, et cetera. Traffic's not our issue. Our issue is the capacity and the public land that's in public ownership. What would be, I guess, the highest and best use according to the public? What does the public feel is the highest and best use? So that's kind of an introduction, I guess. Let's hear from the folks.
Pam, any comment before we start? Public comment?
It is priority set number 5 is your land, our land, your land, with we own it, it's public land. That's priority set number 5.
Yeah, no, that was a good summary, Frank.
Yeah, I'm a little curious about, I heard something about an amendment. What amendment? I want to know, so I'm going to take a little time with it.
Okay, that's okay, because it was an amendment, I guess, to our approved precise plan. Was it a precise
Yeah, I
plan?
believe it was a general plan amendment and also amendment to the precise plan, because there
What was this
is
circa? When was it done?
That plan was approved from Guthrie?
Wait, let me just finish.
Okay.
Let's not
Sorry.
pass
There
the-
is,
I'm over here.
yeah, there is a current precise plan on our property
Okay.
that has been approved, and it was approved during the campus, that was part of the campus
Okay.
process. And then I believe in 2011 or 12, there was Guthrie came in and
Right,
did
that
the
was over in-
presentation, yes.
In Kentfield.
And then there was an application that was filled out for a general plan amendment and I believe a precise plan amendment.
And it was amended to scale down a fire?
No, it was
signal,
just
or-
an amendment to provide other alternatives to it. There were no attachments, it was just the actual application to start that amendment.
Right, and that was brought before the governing board of directors?
No, I don't believe it was. I believe it was part of,
Just let me hear from what the council says, please. Okay.
I'm not sure, but it was part of retaining the consultant to work with the district with looking at all the options. I don't think it was ever clearly delineated that it would include this general plan and precise plan amendment, but I recall we were looking at documents because we were looking, it was another related issue about the entitlements of Larkspur property, and getting documents, we found this amendment, and that was when Frank was board president, and I brought it to his attention.
So this was, did that ever come to the board until tonight?
Oh, yes, we had it on the board agenda, and we voted to withdraw the application. And it was clear that Larkspur was gonna refund our deposit.
Okay.
The minutes will reflect that. We can find those minutes and get them to the board.
Okay.
in the
So
public.
I've been receiving a lot of emails about people making demands on how to use the land. Some groups I've never even heard of. So I look at the kind of the litany of emails, and I know recently you presented to this group of people that have been sending me these emails mostly. So now I want to know what was said at that meeting, and are they all excited?
I don't think anything done excited. I think they came here a little excited. They were concerned about the stationary plan.
Okay.
I put down pretty much all their comments in the report.
Well, what did you say? I mean, were you talking to the group?
Well, we've got it, I've recorded, we've got it recorded.
Okay, so I see
We'll get it to you. We'll get you a CD of it, absolutely.
Were you there, Greg?
Yes.
I'll want to know more about it after the public speaks.
All right, I think it's time for public comment on this item. And I'd ask folks actually to use the lectern if that's not burdensome. And we generally try to keep folks to.
That means not a real.
You're right, it's not. I'm sorry, because we're going to have a
move the screen
presentation.
over there.
All right, just stand time. Sure, we're going to just roughly try to keep folks to 3 minutes. And please give us your name and your town, and I'll just take people as I see hands.
This next lady with the blonde hair can raise her hand.
Martha Golden, Green Bay. I live in the, sort of the flatlands of Green Bay, and although this is a dry year, in the really wet years, we've got wet weather flow problems. And Ms. Greger was addressing the fact that you've got to consider what your capacity and growth is and repair and refurbishment of all the lines before you've got to figure that in the whole thing. Won't you need that land to put improvements on for the existing county, as at your existing area? Before you go selling it off, aren't you going to need it?
Oh, sure, yes, I can answer it. So basically, that's the old sewer treatment plant site. And what we do now is we formed a joint powers authority with the city of Santa Fe, it's Santa Fe Sanitation District, Corte Madera, a portion of Larkspur, and all of the Ross Valley. And we built the Central Marin Sanitation Agency treatment plant over in Santa Fe, just over the hill. And so we pump all of our wastewater now. We don't treat it anymore. We pump it all to Central Marin. They treat it there. So when you're on your bill that you get on your tax bill, about half of that is our cost, and the other half is roughly the cost to treat the sewers. But it's treated now in Santa Fe. So we will not be building another sewer treatment plant on that site. And that's it was a sewer treatment plant, and it was also the headquarters, the offices, and where the trucks are parked, etc.
Is the Santa Fe facility at capacity?
Well, it
Will it be capacity in the
probably
future?
isn't, but we should have some numbers on that. They've also, I think, been asked to comment on the draft EIR, since they are actually the providers of the treatment. We collect and transport it, they treat it. They're the executive director is here tonight. Maybe we can ask him if Central Marin Sanitation Agency is.
But we have built additional capacity recently into the CMSA treatment facility. And, if we don't start fixing all of our pipes and all of our pumps and everything underground, we might have to build it out a bit more sooner than later, so.
I'd rather have you fix things before you go taking on something new and big and.
Well, can I just jump in for a minute?
I'm worried that we're going to.
I know you are, but you know what? I like your comments because they're really where the rubber hits the road. So the bottom line is that property that we all own, I'm a resident in Ross Valley also, we need to put our operations back on that property. Okay, I want to get out of Santa Fe where we have had to temporarily house our facilities. We get back on our land, and a portion of that land needs to be dedicated to your Ross Valley operations. That's my little portion.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. I think the board should be looking at Basher Crane, and I live in Kentfield. I think this board should be looking at that site as a source of income forever, in perpetuity. That's the main object. It should be a source of income for you. Whatever way you want to do it, it should be the best use of a source of income.
William Smith again from Mill Valley. For Patrick, who was not at the meeting, one of the things that came up at the meeting was that the possibility that the Bridge District was inquiring as to the need for additional parking.
Right.
And of course, parking is already a capacity over there, and it has an effect, of course, on the ferrying service. So my suggestion at the meeting, hearing that, was you had two problems, financial issues, that were somewhat tied here. One was cleaning up the land, and the other one was repairing all of your efficient infrastructure. So this, I thought, given the district's very secure income, having a trapped rider, let's say fare box there at the toll plaza now on automatic, where they are going to be collecting money for in perpetuity of great sums, and it's just a matter how much they can squeeze that they will charge. So they have a very high bond rating, and if you could get into a contract with them, you could basically get them to write a lease agreement for a number of years that would be sufficient to go to an investment bank as a piece of collateral for a collateralized debt obligation that would be easily a source of funding to clean up the property, get it cleaned up so it's in pristine condition, and relieve the organization of future liabilities for toxicity. Secondly, for an additional period of years, you could have a second lease agreement, which could then act as a second collateralization item to take as an asset for an asset-backed security, which is very easy now to sell, very low interest rates. You get lots of collateral, lots of money today for very few dollars in the future, and as a consequence, you could then use that money to do some of this repair work that you have, as opposed to raising your rates. So going back to what Basha said about creating income, here is a way where two organizations can work together to solve three problems.
Right.
And I would put this is just creative financing. This is like the kind of things people do when they put together real estate deals. You got lots of real estate smart attorneys around here might be willing to volunteer their services if they're retired as a civic contribution to put together and you could get lots of money, and the property then would not be a political hot potato threatening the community with development. So that's my suggestion.
I appreciate your comments, and just to let you all know, we have done this with the Giants games in the past, where we would use up our dirt lot. We'd fill the whole place up with cars. We know it works. We know that the Golden Gate Transit system has been interested on and off over time, but what's a good use of that land is the fact that there are non-bioavailable PCBs below ground, which means that they can't be diluted in water and enter the water table. They're not dissolate. Locking them in under asphaltic surface is not a bad use of that land, and frankly, I think it's a good idea. So that's a kind of interesting and also verifiable use that would be readily accepted in a lot of ways. I'm not so sure how Larkspur would look at it, but.
Why should you care about Larkspur?
Well, they approve your plan set.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
Sorry about that.
Let's move on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, I was at the meeting last week that the two directors held, and it was.
I'm sorry, name and.
Oh, I'm sorry, Laura Ethel, I live in Larkspur. The reason we had a full house is that all the people who came, and I suspect that it's most of the people here tonight, are opposed to high-density development at Larkspur Landing. That's why we're here. Now, it's a complicated decision to decide what to do with that property that you own, partly because of the toxicity problems. And I think that in a short meeting like, with a short opportunity to comment, we're not going to solve those problems for you. It's something you have to work on. But there's no question that the people in this room came here because they oppose the high-density development. So first there is what to do with your property. And the second is we would like you to help us oppose the general plan for Larkspur Landing, where even more property is proposed to be developed, 920 units, I heard. And we don't want that. And you play a role in that, you and the Central Marin Sanitary District, by commenting on the EIR and making it clear what you think is the appropriate thing to do. You have a lot of problems with not only that project, but others in Fairfax and other places that are being developed. The EIR does not address, I don't think, the lack of capacity when there's a heavy rain. That capacity is not the responsibility to treat of this district. It's the responsibility of Central Marin Sanitary District to treat that. And there are opportunities here for you to help us by commenting on those issues, and we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate your comments. I want to make something really clear in this room so people understand the difference between a sanitary district, which we are, and a sanitation agency. And this is really important because y'all vote, okay? Sanitary districts take an elected person to be appointed to their boards. Sanitation agencies take appointments to their boards. So you think about that from a political perspective. In this district, you can't be on this board without being elected. Let's say there's a sanitation agency in your neighborhood. That could be anyone from any other board outside of the district that gets appointed. So
not exactly.
appointments to boards, there comes a certain amount of political influence with that. It may not be the will of the people that's speaking at the board. And Mr. Holland's going to work with me on this. I know he will, and I'm happy to work with him if he ever gets elected. But one needs to look up the pure definition of sanitation agency opposed to sanitary district. The clear definition is one's elected, one's appointed.
Yes, Mimi Willard, I'm from Kentfield, and I think Laura just stated much of what I would have stated far more articulately, so I won't repeat that. And I think Director Guasco just made an important comment here. And the two of them come together in the fact that, as revealed in a recent IJ poll, 85% of the people who are out there are opposed to high-density development at Larkspur Landing. And the people who bother to respond to polls are the kinds of people who vote. And we're really happy that we have an elected body here, and I guess we're just asking you to do the right thing that your constituents want. Thank you.
Kathleen Mulcahy, I'm from Larkspur, and I sent each of you a letter late last night just depicting, because I kind of wanted to do it for myself, how much I've invested in the time being a Larkspur citizen, being a ratepayer here, in trying to understand this complicated process, because as the audience has said, you're one piece of the puzzle. And Patrick, I would really encourage you to take a look at the tape and listen for the 2 hours. It was very rich. And one of the things of the meeting, it was very rich. And one thing that you were alluding to about the differences between the two is something that came up that I thought was rather heartfelt, and that is being an elected body versus us choosing as a community of communities to merge and not have all this separateness, is that we're saying we have chosen to want you versus merging it all together and giving away that power. We'd like to keep that local control. But with that local control means that you're listening to your local population here on what it is that is hurting us. And that is, we really do not want the wind cups of the world to be going all along that. And I realize, your sewer systems go all along that, along with the traffic. And we just really would like you to take stand in being a voice in your letter back to Larkspur, being a city member and talking to the city officials on a daily basis myself. They're very receptive to listening to your concerns as far as wet flow, because we have learned from, I think it took us all meeting, all that 2 hours meeting with Greg and really drilling down between dry and wet flow. I've learned a heck of a lot. And we really don't have an answer for roughly about a year out. We've got all the data and analysis in, it sounds like, from the district. But we need to now work with that data to come out with some reports in order to find out where we truly fall versus the 2006 data that was generally looked at. And the other thing I thought was interesting was that the ramifications about this property that we're speaking of at 2000 Webster Landing Circle, the consultants were informed about the litigations that we're going through, but didn't really dive down or report any of that back to the 4 workshops. I've now had the city load the 4th workshop because it wasn't on the public site to be found easily. Larkspur's now put everything into background documents, so it's very clear. I noticed those Cam and Frank discussions out there in one of the workshops. So it's now very clear for customers and myself to go through what the processes were before it got to here. And so I just, as a Larkspur resident, just very much encourage you to listen to the 2 hours. It's well worth your ear.
Thank you.
Yes. My name is June Selvas, and I live in Larkspur. And very briefly, just what I don't want to see reiterating is a very high density, 920 units, hotels, and in an area that I commute frequently in the evening, and sometimes it can take me 45 minutes, literally, to go from St. Francis Drake onto the other side of that 101 freeway to get on the Richmond Bridge because of complications. And so I think any major development, and I know you may not address traffic issues, but any major development that's going to happen on your site would have to mitigate that Richmond Bridge onto Sir Francis Drake in the 101 corridor. And I personally would want to see more affordable housing in a far less scale, smaller scale, if anything's going to be done on that site. Trying to keep in the character of Larkspur. I think it's atrocious that Wincup, 10% of that is affordable housing when many of our teachers cannot stay here in Marin, and you may or may not have a whole lot of decision about what is built on that site, but I think if you create clauses that could help limit that type of growth and development for a town that really values its small town character. Greenhouse gases, the off gas of, trains, pollution. There's a preschool right near there. A lot of people could be very directly affected. And if the land sale were to happen, to make sure that the smart train actually does come to that area, because otherwise, you could have a whole plan assuming that smart train is going to make it there, and for whatever reason legally it doesn't, then your plan could be a moot point. So that would be something else to also consider, in addition to the points already brought up. Water supply in a huge drought year, the increase to schools, which would primarily be the Centerville School District, how they're going to accommodate that. And also just how many multi-stories high is, and we've been talking up to 5 stories high, would be a huge profile on a very visible area. So I really appreciate your time and consideration in looking at this, and being elected officials, you can see that we're being watched very closely. So thank you for your consideration and time. Thank you.
Rick Holland, Fairfax. Several important issues have been brought up, and to go back to the beginning of tonight's meeting, we started talking about the bond proceeds and the indebtedness that the district has taken on. The $8 million was used to repay the bond the proceeds from the sale of the property are supposed to have paid that. So we're dealing with this issue. It's been ongoing for 6 years, and we need to look forward as to how to resolve this. Unfortunately, because of the incompetence of the last 6 years, we're going round and round in circles. And the $1.5 million that was canceled for the indebtedness of the folly of the offices in San Rafael. But as I pointed out last month about the 3 real estate scandals that have cost this district $25 million, and why we have such a hole. So, what people are asking tonight, in your response of what we ought to do in going into the future, 2 points that I'd like to make. One, it would be great if you would join the Marin Association of Realtors in a policy addressing the density, and what we're trying to achieve throughout all the jurisdictions in Marin is an acceptance of a maximum of 20 units per acre. Cap it at that. And if the county and everybody, if we could begin a dialogue at a maximum of 20 units per acre, I think it would facilitate the discussion. That would cut in half almost the 900 and some odd units. And at least we could have a discussion between the towns and county about what is feasible. Talking about numbers of 900 plus is just unrealistic. So if we could have a consensus of 20 units per acre as a maximum, that could go a ways in facilitating a housing discussion. The other issue, of course, is that in my campaign, and you'll be hearing a lot about, we don't need a fee increase because we have this property and there are solutions, either leasing or selling. Of course, it should have happened 6 years ago and didn't, but we should look at the economic possibilities from this property. And it is, in my view, irresponsible to be looking at a fee increase from the ratepayers when we have this asset. And I would hope that Pam would cast the vote knocking the fee consideration even so we could just forget about that and move on, because the vote for the fee increase rests in Pam Lake's hands. So, if we could get move forward with that and support, I think, many of the groups and folks that have come here and cap the number, or the density, the number of units, and then really sit down and look at what makes economic sense for this property and how to avoid this unnecessary fee increase. Those would be 2 good points we could get out of this. The question I do have, because it's been mentioned about the legal fees and a request for the public records, who has put this large public records request upon you?
I can answer that.
I was going to say, I don't think it pertains to this agenda item, but we'll indulge you.
That's not right.
Yeah, public records requests themselves are public records.
Yes.
So we've had some public records requests from the IJ, and we've had public records requests from Mr. Richards' attorneys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to,
The guy that's in jail, Richard.
I wanted to continue with addressing the question that Patrick made about influencing the city of Larkspur in the direction of the proposal I presented to you. Earlier this year, I was involved with a dispute with the GGNRA, which we resolved the dispute with a meeting with a couple of us, with Frank Dean, who's the head of the park. And during this meeting, what came up was this idea of how to bring people to the park in a way that would not involve single occupancy or double occupancy vehicles. And they were thinking about locations for parking facilities to intercept traffic coming into Marin County and taking them out to the park. And I think that if you were to have a parking area there coming off the Richmond Bridge, you could intercept a lot of traffic like what is happening at Manzanita, and take it right out to Francis Drake, the Bear Valley Ranger Station. They would That would be a synergy that could occur that might give you some sort of additional leverage going to Larkspur. You could take a look and ask the people at the GGNRA how they might utilize the facility in off-commute times on the weekend.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Susan Kirsch. I live in Mill Valley. I'm here tonight also being a part of a group called Citizen Marin, which is a gathering of people from all across Marin County who get together to talk about what's been happening in, especially since Senate Bill 375 was passed, which brings us Plan Bay Area, which is how we have planned development areas like what's being faced with the Larkspur Stationary Development Plan. And so I just want to say a couple of things about that. One is that I know throughout the county, people are not appreciating this boon to build, and that more and more people are finding their voices to say that the size of the developments are inappropriate for what we have in Marin County, and that the quality of life that we have here that includes the aesthetic beauty of this county, which would be severely threatened by whatever would go forward in Larkspur, is reason to hope that you would vote against this project. And in the language of the EIR, I think that what that means is that you would write to recommend that no project move forward. I mean, one thing to pay attention to is the fact that we talk about the 920 units that are proposed there. If you add up all the square footage, they're proposing over 1 million square feet of new building in this place with the hotel and the commercial. And if you think of a single unit being even a modest 1,100 square feet, it's over 1 million square feet of building. So I think that's one thing to keep in mind in knowing how much you can help protect residents from throughout the county, not just the people who are in a position to vote for you, but all of us who love this county and love the beauty of Larkspur. And then just one other point that I'd like to make is that being in Mill Valley, many of you probably know that our planning director, resigned under the pressure of having been operating with disregard for rules and regulations and permits and the kinds of things that we hope to have our public people enforcing for us. And the significant thing about Mike Moore's resignation under some pressure is that he has been Marin County's representative from planning and developers to ABAG representing the 9-county Bay Area. And not only that, he has been ABAG's selected chairman of the planning department heads. So when you're talking about certain paperwork being filed inappropriately, or as we know in Mill Valley, buildings are being built out of compliance with what our planning directors have approved, there is a kind of there's something wrong with what's happening. And however you can vote to say slow things down, for now, no project is a great help to all of us.
Thank you. Right here in the red and then in the backs.
Joan Bennett from Kentfield. I attended the meeting 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, and one of the issues that was brought up was, I believe the study goes back to 2009 when the EPA first came in and looked at the toxins in the soil. And the question that was raised by you, by Sid here, was, are there any other toxins in the soil aside from the PCBs? We know they're in there for a fact, but we don't know if there are other toxins as well, and if there are they traveling underground in aquifers that may be getting in table water or any other bodies of water underground that we're unaware of? And this ties into the potential level of use that you may have for site number 5 there, because one of the issues that was brought up was that the level of use will determine the level of the cleanup. So if you pave it over, if you cap it, which is acceptable to the EPA for a cleanup, that's probably the cheapest way to go, and you end up with a parking lot for ferry overflow parking, 49er games, Giants games, you name it. Warriors games. So it's a good source of income for a long time to come, which you can direct towards repairing $180 million in infrastructure. And on this same level, or on this same issue, if you were to go beyond just capping it and proceeding with some sort of development, whether it's the site that, or the project that has already been approved for the 126 units, I believe, not the full potential 250 units. I don't know if in the long run, if in 20 years you're going to have a cancer cluster pop up there, and liability is non-delegable. The chain of liability will extend right back to the sanitary district if 20 years out from now you find out that the PCBs weren't the only toxins in the soil, that there were other toxins as well that may lead to other illnesses. So while you may think that you're shifting the burden of responsibility and liability to the successive buyers, that's not going to happen. And everybody in this room who's a ratepayer will end up paying for it.
In the back?
Yeah, I got here late, so I apologize if this has been covered, but
What's your name?
I'm Jennifer Larson. I live in Corte Madera. And I have a question. I don't know how interactive this is, but if we are all ratepayers and taxpayers paying for our sewer bills, then effectively we have collectively paid for that site. I may be off, but so wouldn't it be incumbent on you all to listen to what we want, and then there doesn't have to be a whole lot of discussion? I mean, it just seems very straightforward to me that if 80 or 90% of the people don't want 920 units and furthermore don't want 400 or 300 or 200, that we should say, okay, that's great, and then the matter's kind of closed. I understand it doesn't work that way. My question is why? Naively why?
It can work that way. It should work that way.
So I mean, it's an honest question. I just really, truly don't understand.
These are the things that people should be allowed to vote on, the way I see it, it's reflective. So, you being in Corte Madera, I appreciate you coming over to this district and giving us some constructive feedback. I believe that people should be allowed to vote on things that change their terrain dramatically. So that's good feedback. Thank you.
Selling that land to a developer, you go through that money in 1 year. You know, it's not going to
We
carry.
go to that money in one capital improvement project or a disaster.
What if you have a parking lot for 40 years?
Well, that's a good thought.
Yes, in the back.
I think, Rick Avalon from Westford, I second the motion to keep the land as an income source. However, that could be a maximum income source, because I think that sewer projects are just going to be go on forever and become ever increasingly more expensive. And so you're going to need that money because you can't keep raising the sewer rates. And I would also suggest that using it as parking will increase the traffic problem a lot more than using it to develop housing or offices. Housing would actually be the least increase in traffic. That building twice a day, whereas parking would be cars coming and going all the time.
Well, yeah,
All
it's
kinds of
2,000
things.
cars though, through the year. 3,000 or 4,000 cars will be out of that.
One person at a time, only fair.
All right, is there anyone else? Yes?
Just a, I'm sorry, she did not have a chance to speak yet.
Okay, go ahead.
Nancy O'Connor from San Anselmo. I just want to point out that this is just sort of the beginning in terms of capacity of the district to handle additional service needs. This huge development plan you'll have to address, being able to address the capacity of it. We have other service needs that are coming down the pike in the Ross Valley. We've got a trolley coming to Fairfax and San Anselmo with a lot of planned development all up and down Sir Francis Strait. So you're going to have to plan for those additional housing units as well as this sort of beginning one at Larkspur. So I think that really you need to be strong and say that the district can't at this time really afford to have that kind of capacity burden placed on them, and tell that in the DEIR, because that is it's going to be the beginning of a real mess when we get down to addressing the ability of the district to.
We need to look at it a bit more deliberately when it comes to capacity and hydraulics.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we've done that yet. So even though it sounds like a lot of extra load to the system, it may not be, or it may be. We need to probably look at that a bit more deliberately.
Yeah,
before we
and if
just
you could
assert it.
address that in the EIR, would appreciate it. Thank you.
I was just going to briefly second Basha Crane's suggestion here, which is it's almost kind of human nature. You have the money and you spend it. And the idea of if you do decide that this property should be produced, it should be turned into money as opposed to, say, a park or something like that. If it's going to be turned into money, make it into a long-term revenue stream. I think it's a really great idea.
All right. See no more hands at the moment. I'll bring it back to the board. And my understanding is that we are going to try to give the staff direction as to how to respond, or else to ask for an extension, or else, are we crafting language for a letter for you? What do you want from us, Ray?
Yeah, tell us what you want.
And then we need to figure out if we can collectively provide it, or other board members, do you want to have more discussion now, post public comments? Wow, that doesn't happen.
Well, I think it's too fast to just say we're gonna, have you guys read any of the ER? It's 433 pages.
Only bits and pieces over the
And
years.
we don't have a board member tonight, so whatever we do, I just want to be really careful about what decisions we come up with that we're really representing the constituents. We all have our own personal agendas up here that we should do, but I just want to make certain that we've done our homework and due diligence, and that we're going to say in that EIR what we really feel the people are saying to us. So I don't want to just say, Greg, would you do a letter? I don't want to do that. No way. That's got to come back.
Well, and I think we all know that this is, pushing on a lot of Marin issues. We're just part of a massive web, and I want us to be cognizant of that and reflect the input that we're getting, in a way that validates it.
Right, and there's also a lot of unknowns here. We don't know what it's really going to cost to clean it up. We don't really have some of these answers. So, that's what I'm saying. We need to really sit down and kind of look at what we're hearing from the community. I'm still getting emails every day. So, there will be a cutoff point when we have to actually come together and present our report back to the city council.
I'm not sure how realistic it is to receive an extension of comment period for the draft EIR. I don't know if anyone else is asking for an extension, for instance. So are we, there's the Golden Gate Bridge Highway and Transportation District, there's Ross Valley Sanitary District, there's Central Marin Sanitation Agency that handles certain aspects of the sewage, there's the Marin Municipal Water District. Are there any of the governmental agencies that might be involved, that might be asking for an extension of time to respond, or? Well, and if it's not given, then we should be prepared to make some comments, and the purpose of that is to keep open our options come time for the final EIR, that our issues, even as general as they may be, to be sure that they're properly addressed. Interesting what we've seen over here at this little site here at the Rose Garden. The San Francisco Chronicle carried a story on Sunday about the archaeological value of the site. What was found was unbelievable. It's like, and I guess no one really looked at it. Development improved. So here we've got a site that's not that far away, and we have no idea if there's any archaeological issues. Do we? Is it
Sure we do. There's all sorts of Ohlone Indian artifacts on
our property?
East side of the property where the old discharge portion for outfall to Cordillera Creek was found. Every artifact was cataloged and recorded with the local Native American under the local Native American oversight, there was burial remains in Tule hutches. There was traded artifacts among the Native American Indians from the Modoc counties with the Ohlone that were down on the site. Several yards of material were removed, taken down to approximately 16 feet below existing grade where the district operated on, that were taken meticulously down layer by layer, and I was the backhoe operator for them. So there was, they literally cataloged every square inch of the area that they knew had been populated for hundreds of years, perhaps thousands of years, and it was well protected, well cataloged, well documented.
Is that all on record? Do we have this on record somewhere?
Well, there's a local firm that's well known for doing it. It's part of the documentation prior to putting the property back on sale, but they were put back in place, and then we had to bring up back to existing workable grade, the 16 feet or whatever it was, in accordance with the Native American requirements, and that they not be disturbed in the future. So the district spent 2 years doing that, and I think I spent a whole year when they got down to where they needed to really be very careful how they moved larger portions of material, and they looked at every square inch. It was fascinating.
Oh, so that information should be,
I'd say circa 1997, 1988.
passed on to the state department in the form of comments to the EIR as to what we found. I had no idea. This one is good. And we've got to address the dry weather versus the wet weather flows, our capacity issues, our current cost estimates to repair the pipes we know that have to be repaired to meet the state's cease and desist order. All these are costs to this agency that we need to advise the city of Larkspur as to what we're facing here with this district, with the capacity. And perhaps it's premature from Larkspur to include priority site number 5, the Sanitary District number 1 property. Maybe they need to at this time delete that from the stationary folder. Until we as an agency know full well where we're going with everything and with the land and et cetera. I don't know.
That has no relevance to the plan.
It seems that we've got issues we have to address. I think we have to make that clear to the city of Larkspur that we appreciate the work they've done so far, but the fact is that we're nowhere close to being able to make any kind of a decision on that land, and that they need to delete RA site number 5. That's just official to us.
Is there a standard format for these response letters? Is it, are we being asked to respond very narrowly, or are we allowed to give as wide, broad comments?
There's standard categories of impact analysis, as you can see from the draft document, and the district has a nexus with a range of those specific resource areas that they're listed. So that's about as standard as I can suggest, is that as a public agency we have, and as a property owner, we have certain reasonably specific linkages with the proposed project. The project is a set of zoning and land use plans that have a long future ahead of them. So the short answer, Mary, is there's not a fixed standard. No. People, draft EIRs like draft NEPA documents solicit every type of comment under the sun. They're a public process, and that's how it works.
we've had, I think about a half a dozen different developers or people have inquired about purchasing the land. And so, there's a lot of interest in buying and purchasing that land. The owner of the Country Mart has made a couple of offers. Someone contacted me that purchased distressed properties and markets them. There's all kinds of people looking at this. I think we have to be very cautious as to how we address the public's land and how we're going to arrive at the conclusion that ultimately we're going to make.
You've had 6
What
years.
to do with the land?
6 years you've had to make this decision.
Do you have a personal investment in the land? You sound like you have a real
No,
investment
the
in
6
the
years,
land.
6 years they've had a chance to do something and they haven't been able to do it.
Let's try to, I feel like we need a process between now and our next formal meeting if we're going to meet, well, we do, if we're going to meet the June 2nd deadline. I also think that we need, maybe perhaps a subcommittee of the board to work with staff to draft a response. And so,
I don't agree. We've done our work. I mean, Frank and I have gone to the public. This is a board decision. I don't want us, Frank, you can chime in whenever, but I just kind of feel like this has to be a whole board effort. This is what we're good putting out in the EIR. We've already met. We gave our summation of our letter of the meeting. There's a DVD. That's just funny.
Okay, my goal is to get
sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. My goal is to get a document, and I guess what would be the process for getting a document that reflects the process?
Well, we
that
can,
we've gone through?
we've got two major areas that we can pretty readily comment on. One is the specific listed resource areas, which is wastewater utility service, hazardous substances, and cultural resources. And we can make some fairly specific comments on those based on the content of the draft EIR as to whether we think the analysis was adequate, whether we think there's additional information that they should be considering in the future. I think that given the fact that the district has now had two pretty extensive public discussions where we have received a lot of input from our, a mix of customers and some folks out of the district, but that's beside the point. We received a whole bunch of public input, and we could certainly summarize the issues of concern raised from these two public meetings and list that in our. I would suggest that beyond that, for example, for the board to take a position for or against the project, and remember, the project for CEQA terms is the station area plan. That's the project being evaluated. That would be an entirely different issue. That would be a policy level decision for the board that I would advise on. We can very readily, I would say, summarize what I would call the technical issues and the public input that we have heard in the last two meetings. So those are things that we can prepare and move ahead towards the June 2nd deadline. The issues beyond that, I think, would require further deliberation by the board.
Our council has land use and zoning lawyers on staff, and they can help put together a letter for us.
The sequel comment letter?
Sequel comment letter.
Usually we could do that. Usually what I would suggest is get a environmental consultant to go through it and respond. But
we did talk about that as a committee, and we weren't sure if we had the time available to get a consultant, find a consultant on board, and get a consultant, up to speed, and then get comments made.
Do you have an environmental consultant?
But we can work with the staff on it because they're,
Do you have a planning consultant that you use?
We have a planning consultant on staff, yeah.
Okay.
But because I look at it, it would just be hazardous materials, cultural resources. I think you need to look at public services because that would be the capacity, and then the utilities and infrastructure, that might be something you could look at and give comments. But as Greg said, the CEQA comments are separate than the district's position about what is the use of the property. So you shouldn't mix those. I mean, responding to comments is these are the environmental concerns you need to look at. coming back with a policy letter saying, we don't want anything done on our property at this point, and that would be a different type of letter. Yeah, and that is.
You think?
Well.
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, other issues are should this stationary plan go forward, we need to be talking about double plumbing of the new development that occurs, so the toilets could be flushed with treated wastewater that would come from Central Wind Sanitation Agency's plant. We need to talk about rainwater catchment. We need to talk about other conservation devices and wastewater reduction solutions to, in effect, you know, reduce the overall impact on our facility. Should whatever they decide to be built is built. I mean, that makes sense.
I guess I would propose that we stick to the more narrow scope, which is to respond from a CEQA perspective. I don't think we're ready. I mean, those are lots of ideas that we could use throughout the system ultimately. I don't think we could say that we require that be done
First of
in
all,
Larkspur.
we can require it. We're the agency that provides the sanitary services, and if this agency says, this is mandatory, then.
Well, I think Larkspur would have most to say about as far as the stormwater pollution prevention programs, the cisterns, the bioretention systems, the use of rainwater, that sort of thing. I think that sanitary district may not have the kind of influence in those realms. See, what you're trying to do is use more reusable, renewable resources on the land and make it part of the requirement.
There's portions of Larkspur land that's already double plumbed.
Well,
That is required by NMWD, so it seems this is an opportunity for us.
That's a gray water. Are you doing double plums for gray water?
For gray water, yes.
Yeah, I understand that. That's a good thought.
Embassy Suites, Autodesk, they're double plumbed.
But I'm just saying, Frank, you mentioned some other things, when, you know, rainwater and things like that, that there may be, may be more in the court of the city of Larkspur's influence. And that maybe that would, I think I hear what Mary's saying is perhaps we should be working with what we can influence, like gray water.
And as far as our site, I mean, the public owns it, and I think it's properly addressed in the draft environmental impact report.
Well, Larkspur has to address things like semi-permeable solutions for filtration of water before it enters the water table and all sorts of things, fire retention systems. So they can cover all that because they're required to. Especially if more than
250 units are going to be put on the public property, and the public property is not available for the 250 units. They may have to find another location for 250 of their units. I mean,
yeah, but it's a 10-acre site. That's not a low-impact development. That's a fairly substantial development, even with 100 units or whatever. But the point is, this Larkspur's going to probably have final say on that.
Larkspur going to have final say on what happens on the land?
How the land's used to protect the environment, you know what I'm saying? Because they have to follow the same guidelines that any other city and the county has to follow. We're all members of Marin County Stormwater Pollution Prevention Program, so we have to follow impact levels of how water affects the environment and the local waterways.
So just as a point of reminder, I think everyone's clear on, well, two things. Number one, so in my understanding and experience, it would be appropriate for us to make some, what I would call high-level comments or suggestions or recommendations about long-term development features like dual plumbing, like recycled water, and so forth. Those have a relatively reasonable connection with the district's basic mission as a wastewater utility service. And I think that, obviously we cannot dictate anything, but this is a comment letter. We can suggest those types of things and go on the record. A lot of what you're doing with a comment letter like this is you're simply putting things into the administrative record. The administrative record is very important for the long-term CEQA process for a whole bunch of reasons. So I do think that, again, based on my experience, we could appropriately put in some high-level comments about the types of long-term development policies and standards that we might like to see for that area to the extent that they deal with water and wastewater. The second one is that if the project is the stationary plan, if the project went away tomorrow and just disappeared, this district still has a parcel that is zoned and generally approved for a whole host of mixed-use development, including some commercial and a hotel, et cetera. If the stationary plan process disappears tomorrow, this district still has a parcel that is currently teed up for that type of future development once some of the other issues like PCBs and so on are resolved. My point in mentioning that is, that to me is the reason for continuing to separate out this district's decisions about what is or isn't the future uses of that site from the comments on the station area plan. You could tell them tomorrow to kill the station area plan, and they could do that, and you would still be left with a parcel that is currently zoned and has entitlements and so forth for all of the development that's already been, I don't want to say approved, but it's basically in the works. So you need to take care of that on its own process, is my point. So I'm seeing 4 areas of comment for this letter. We can address some of the specific technical areas. We can summarize the public comment that we have heard. We can make, to the extent that the board thinks it's appropriate, we can make some suggestions for some long-term development standards for the area related to water and wastewater. I forget what the fourth one was. Those would be
stormwater, let's say, or
Cultural, you're gonna deal with cultural.
Yeah, cultural. So those would be, what we can do is bring you back a draft letter at the May meeting.
Are you going to address the aquifer area too?
Toxicity issues challenged by, or if there was any
Geology.
testing in the past?
Geology?
I have a feeling there was plenty of drilling done out there to test it, but I could be wrong.
You can make recommendations for further study on just about anything you want. It's a public comment letter.
I have a question. I've heard that there's overarching concern in the community regarding the use of that land. I've seen the emails. I heard a statistic from somebody in the crowd that said something about 89% of Marin County, or the
85.
And where is this statistic?
It's a poll that the IJ ran. And honestly, it's pretty consistent with, if you walk around and you ask people on the street, it's probably higher than that.
So it was a poll that some sort of site that they've got for.
All right, so is that specific enough? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm done.
Is that specific enough direction to meet your request?
Yes, we'll bring back a draft letter at the May
Is that okay
meeting.
with everyone?
We'll cover those things.
And Peter will have a chance to get on the street, hopefully.
Yes.
Maybe if we could make that DVD available to Mary and Pat and Peter.
Yeah, we can do that. We can post or send it to
From last week's meeting.
the community television.
Sure, perfect, there you go.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to item number 12, discussion of transitioning board members from independent contractor status to being elected.
Okay, we'll go ahead.
Yeah, and it's 5 minutes.
Let's just take a short break.
All right. 13 is gone. All right, in the interest of time, I'm going to propose that we continue item number 12, which is an information item only,
No time to
and continue item number 13. Vivian Housen has agreed to do the presentation later for us. We would like to entertain item number 14 and number 16. So if that's acceptable to everyone, we'll just move to item number 14.
14 and what?
Can I suggest perhaps the next time the lateral's on, maybe just notify the Marin Board of Realtors. They seem to be real concerned about that. But the fact is, we're under a cease and desist order, and they included in that state order lateral. So get them notified so they know what's going on.
All right, item number 14, consideration of participating in the CASA collection systems in the future.
I'll try to make this very quickly. This is actually a pretty straightforward item. So This came about, or came to our attention in the run-up to the January CASA conference. A couple of the agencies in the Bay Area had been getting together and talking about the fact that we were all facing a lot of the same challenges with aging infrastructure, renovations, you name it. And the goal, the idea was that CASA had a really successful wastewater treatment plant to the future initiative several years back that essentially this is somewhat modeled off of. And the idea is pretty straightforward. It's like you have a handful of agencies that are all trying to solve the same long-term problems. Why not do it in sort of a structured, planned manner? Because the utility industry, a lot of times we don't share information. So CASA kind of became the forum to sort of centralize this around. And we had a series of roundtable discussions. They were very, very well attended. Really, really enthusiastic input from a bunch of senior staff.
Wait. I'm sorry. Did we pay Vivian to be here?
I didn't realize Vivian was.
I'm not charging anything.
No, she was here. She's helping us. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought that she was on the talk and going to make a presentation on it.
I was, but I didn't, so I won't charge you. That's right, but I'm staying to hear this.
She's got, so so what this is at this point, there's 10 agencies that have formed, that are participating in the initiative. The idea is to have basically it's a structured process over about a 6 to 12 month period, and we're going to be sharing and basically brainstorming information on how to solve all the common problems if you're looking about, say, 5-10 years into the future for the wastewater collection industry, so that we can come up with solutions, ideas, and standards and so forth that can be shared between the agencies. These are all agencies in the San Francisco Bay Area. They run the gamut, as I understand it, from some of the really, really well-run, well-regarded ones to ones that are, struggling to kind of get caught up on things. So it's pretty straightforward. There's a flyer attached. This is the attachment A was the flyer that was put together for this. It is ready to go. There's been a series of coordinating conference calls. And the district's participation in this would be, a combination of myself and some of the other senior staff attending the workshops and basically participating for Ross Valley. There is a cost share agreement that is attached. It's very simple, page and a half. You can see from the signature page who some of the other agencies are. Novato Sand District is one of the ones here in the Marin area, but the rest of them are essentially, they essentially circle a good part of the San Francisco Bay Area. This is something that we feel that for $6,000 for the district to participate in this over the next year is just a really, really great opportunity for us to learn and share information on all the same types of challenges that we're trying to address here at the district. So the recommendation from staff is to approve participation in this CASA initiative and authorize the general manager to execute the cost share agreement. The commitment for the district would be the $6,000 to the services. And we'd be coming back over the next 6 to 12 months with the final deliverables and the results of the work. I can't tell you, when I was at CASA and I sat through one of the 2 roundtables on this, the value of the amount of information and ideas that were exchanged just within that 1 hour period. So this is a great opportunity to tap a really, really valuable brain trust out there in the industry to help Ross Valley solve its very specific problems. So that's it. I'll hand it back to Lori.
Okay, questions, comments? No, I think it's a good idea.
What's that?
Didn't we have this before?
Well, we
And then we said,
discussed.
no, we didn't want to do it, the money.
No,
this
I
is
think
never, this is a new.
This comes in on the heels of the IMP that, Vivian Housen and her associates helped us create, but after that CASA conference in San Diego?
This one was in, this was the one in Palm Springs.
Okay. See, 10-member agencies got together at the table, as I recollect, along with Dr. Sullivan, Vivian, Greg represented the district, also. They started talking about this concept at that table and realized that there was value in sharing information, especially with forward thinking on the IAMP, which is a revolutionary concept in this industry. So this is what I call the next level. This takes everyone's information into a kind of a melting pot, kind of a analytical way, and also puts it across fairly similar systems, some larger, some smaller, some larger districts, some smaller districts, but the bottom line is it's really a think tank that comes up with probably some great feedback that help us, move into the future, but, and others.
Okay, is this a
So
private?
I think it's a great well to draw from.
Okay, is this a private business?
No, this is CASA is sponsoring the initiative.
Yeah, West Bay Sanitary District is taking the lead, and they're contracting with all the agencies, and they hired my firm to facilitate the workshops along with Dew Point, which is a facilitation firm. And
So what do we, you did conferences, is that for board members, or is that just at staff level?
So the cost is for, there are going to be 8 workshops, and each workshop is going to be progressive, and then there are breakout sessions, and the cost is for the facilitation of all of the sessions, plus the development of a document that'll have all of the participating members' logos, and it will be published. The expectation is that we'll be able to publish it through CASA and CWA, and through this process, also publicize the effort through BACWA and CASA and CWA and become a leader in the collection system arena. And I would like to say that the members that are listed there, the participating members are hand-picked. There are a lot of agencies, a lot of cities, and they were hand-picked to be of similar size generally, but mostly because the agencies are all considered to be progressive. Because the group wanted participation from people who were really passionate about the industry and thinking forward, and not participation by those who just want to sit and soak it all in and take information back to use at their agencies without participating. So they wanted a very interactive discussion that was very productive. So Ross Valley was one of those agencies.
So as an example, I was talking to Judy, she's a elector on the law school. She said there's there's these pipes, and if there's new biodegradable pipes that they're purchasing, they cost more, but shouldn't we be doing something like that? I brought this up 3 years ago, but.
Biodegradable pipe?
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of the purpose of the pipe?
I think after 100 years, they'll do that.
No, there's some more higher tech replacement pipes. So would you?
I haven't heard that.
Well, that's what Judy was telling me.
Judy Shreve.
Yeah, of course they're going to cost more.
Well, we certainly could. I mean, if we'd like to also have discussions at CASA and have discussions with outside participants, such as treatment plants. And so these ideas are ideas that we do want brought back so that we can discuss them.
Hey, Vivian, also I'm pretty sure the focus in this industry is, as the industry moves forward, is how to deploy best management practices, not just at the administrative level, but in the field. The field is the kind of the wild portion of the job. I mean,
the frontier.
What's going on in the field really controls a lot of what goes on at the highest level of the organization. That's where the problem is in a lot of ways. So EMPs deployed across the whole organization has to be taught from the top down, right? So you get these groups working together, similar to where CMSAs and various groups that pool their assets and make their contribution to the collective, to bring the information up to a higher level, and then they make it available to the rest of the industry through CASA or whatever, progressive and even being considered in that after the last several years of what we have kind of lived through is I think good company for this district and also helps us advance our
Some of these
our work.
districts, these are districts that are, been characterized as basically, they were where we are 5 years ago. And they have progressed. They have learned lessons, they have found ways to tackle these challenges, and they are where we want to be, say, for example, in 5 or 6 years. So by working with them, we have a very valuable opportunity to learn lessons without having to relearn them ourselves and tap that brain trust and say, well, why did you do this? How did it work? What cleaning methods work the best? How did you implement CMMS most efficiently? How did you get your workers trained up for the new technology and so forth? So this is like a resource pool just basically sitting there waiting for us to tap. And the utility industry is not known for its aggressive position on those things. And what I mean by that is we tend to be pretty stovepipe. The last time someone from this agency talked to someone from an agency 3 miles away, typically you can count on one hand the number of times it happens in 10 years. It's just the nature of our industry. This type of thing is meant to try and break that down so we don't all sit around in our own little silos and solve the same stupid problems over and over and over again at 10 times the cost if we share information. So it's a very valuable thing to be doing, and it's a very minimal cost.
We've got 2 behemoths on this list, too. 2 of
Yes.
the biggest collection
Yes.
system agencies in this whole Bay
Yes.
Area.
Which are those?
Yes.
It's Central Contra Costa Sanitary District and Union Sanitary. And they've really dealt with growth challenges, growing pains, and also annexation and consolidation concepts.
Laterals.
Public right-of-way, you name it.
So if we wanted to look at a program to put laterals part of larger loans, would you have that kind of feedback or sharing? Okay. All right, thank you.
Novato Sanitary District is a contract agency.
The
For
treatment
the
of
treatment plant. Yeah.
So
You'll-
collection is done locally.
staff.
Yeah. They manage their.
Are any of these others?
No, there are no contracts. In fact, there was a
Only
discussion
Novato
about
is-
whether to include Richmond, but Richmond is managed by Veolia, and the consensus was no, they want agencies that are staffed
Okay.
and not contract.
Okay. So wastewater collection system of the future. Somehow we're going to keep the diapers and handy wipes out, and we're going to keep the plastic bags out of the system, the ones that cause our. What else is going to happen with the wastewater collection systems of the future?
Recycled water, satellite treatment.
Satellite
That's going to
treatment, what's
factor into,
So you think there may be interim spots where it's going to intercept the water and do some initial treatment before it moves on?
maybe you can recycle locally instead of bringing all the flow to the treatment plant and piping it all the way back. That's a topic that's under pretty hot discussion.
Okay. Would that be a mini wastewater treatment facility?
Little package wastewater treatment facility. In fact, West Bay Sanitary District is looking for customers for that. They have a recycled water study ongoing now because they have some golf courses high up in their system. So they're looking at intersecting and streaming recycled water.
No. Central and Sanitation Agency and MMWD have just signed an agreement, and we're working on a $150,000 state grant. $75,000 is our money was put into it. And we're going to take a look at our operation. We treat and dump 11 million gallons a day into the bay. We're going to see how we can reuse it, how we can move it, how we can require double plumbing, similar to what Los Angeles Valley Sanitary District has done with Autodesk and Embassy Suites operations. So there are, the future is treated wastewater, replacing potable water for certain uses.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the
Definitely.
parallel in the treatment plants is, they talk about wastewater treatment plants basically as resource recovery centers now. So that's why you have like your food waste to energy system down at CMSA, your biogas digesters and energy generation, your, turning biosolids into land application materials that can be commercially sold. So there's been, I hate to use an overly used word, but there's like there's a total paradigm shift at the wastewater treatment plant level of the industry. The wastewater collection end of the industry has lagged, as it typically does in a lot of ways in terms of regulations and technology and public attention, but that's where it's coming to next. You guys know us. We've ignored that connection. Okay, this isn't meant to, we went and launched a $60 or $70 million wet weather flow program a few years ago that basically assumed there was like a wall between the treatment plant and the collection agencies, and there was nothing to be done to reduce those wet weather flows. We just said, no, we're going to go spend $70 million to fix the plant.
We didn't say we wanted to do it.
I know, but that's essentially how it played out. My point is, so whether you're talking about, improper disposables, you're talking about, the impact of degraded systems like ours that are making it more difficult to do recycled water because we have saline, the upstream interception and treatment. You can just go on and on. There's a lot of issues that were out of sight, out of mind in our industry and no longer are. There are challenges that no one has ready answers for, which is why when you look at lateral programs, you've got people, agencies all over the Bay trying different things and learning lessons about what works and what doesn't. So rather than us go, let's try the next 10 things on a lateral program, let's go figure out what the hell worked for everyone else in the Bay Area and implement it here and not waste 10 years learning the same lessons. That's what this is about.
And you just have a network of professionals all the time. You
Right.
can pick up
These
the
are some
phone
of
at
the
any
highest-
time and
these
say,
are the best run utilities in the Bay Area that we're tapping into right now.
and us.
Yeah, I feel kind of.
All right, anything more from the board right
pleased that we're
now?
in
Out
that
to the
company
public,
right
any
now.
public comment on this
Rick
item?
Hall in Fairfax.
Yeah.
Where did he go? A couple things, and 10 years ago or so when I talked to CMSA about the recycling, the double piping and so forth, now that's being discussed, it was a cost issue because to put in a double set of pipes that was required, there was an economic reason why it didn't exist, and so some of those things are changing. Pam brought up an important point, who would attend this? And come back in again for a little history because when this district decided to remove itself from CASA and became a laughing stock in the state for its activities. Now we're getting back. It's a very positive step to get back to CASA and get involved with these networks. But after July, and I guess one question I would have, something that's going to be dealt with, it doesn't matter if Tom's sitting up there, I'm up there, and I don't know the other guys, but you get into the consolidation talks, and my point of view, we have a very inefficient and ineffective system because we separate collection and treatment and could save a lot of money if we consolidated. That's my point of view. So I don't know how that fits in with these discussions, but it would have to. So then, of course, you'd have the general manager that's a part of this, but it's not just line workers. I would imagine there would be board members involved as well. So I don't know how that would work out.
There are participants that have treatment and collection, and there are participants that have collection only and are part of the JPA. So I'm sure that topic it did come up in the roundtables, and I'm sure it will come up.
We've got a great $125,000 study we did on consolidation.
There for the taking.
It's there for someone to review. Where the money's been spent, to have to do it. So if it's an or, I would so move that we approve the cost-sharing agreement between West Bay Sanitary District and various agencies, collection systems on the future Track 1, at a cost of $6,000 for the year.
I'll second that.
Edgar Glasgow, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So could a board member, if you did like a one of these workshops on the pharmaceuticals and all that. Could I attend that? 'Cause I'm really interested. Oh. You gonna do webinar or just?
We are.
Gonna do webinar?
Yeah, we're gonna discuss all that at our first meeting of how we're gonna distribute, or who is interested in meeting in person or meeting by web, but we will end up having webinars.
We currently can't get the pharmaceuticals out of treatment plant at CMSA. It goes to the bank.
I love the way she just nods like.
Right now, it's one of the major issues. That and wipes are the two issues that are being discussed. And I. Those are three.
Have you noticed, and I'm sure you've noticed too, Greg, that State Water Resources Control Board now has webinars with all of us to give them feedback on, how is CWIC's working? You have any suggestions, that sort of thing? Have you both been involved in any of that? I even literally sit on the webinars and throw ideas around with peers and the state.
I've been at meetings where they've had the meetings on webinar. I've been in person though.
Right.
Well, I haven't tried it by web.
Let's move on to item number 16, so we can call it a night. All right, item number 16. Discussion of draft request for proposal for legal services. Greg,
I will just kick this off real briefly. It's a relatively quick staff report. So this is just, the board has provided direction that they wanted to go out to issue a request for proposals for legal services. It's taken us, the amount of activity we had, we're just bringing this back at this point. And what you have in front of you is a draft RFP that we would like to get. I'm working with the board to kind of facilitate this, so I'd like to get your feedback on the draft RFP. The idea being that after we get the feedback and finalize it, we will go through the kind of the typical steps that you see listed there, which is getting it issued. We've assumed roughly about a 30-day posting period, and then it's really just similar to any other professional services. Retention, you would review the submittals, rank and select the outfits that you wanted to do interviews with, go through the interviews, make final selections, do contract development, and then go forth from there. So that's basically what you have in front of you tonight. Really, is just the draft RFP. It's pretty nuts and bolts. There's not a lot to it because it's there didn't need to be. I guess basically, we're looking for. This is a lot of feedback we got from the board as far as what we thought the nature of the services and some of the areas you thought were important were, such as the familiarity with the Marin community, legal community, and so forth. So I think what we're looking for this evening is feedback and direction on the draft RFP so that we can then take it to a final stage and work with the board to go forward and post it. What's not addressed in the staff report or the RFP is a discussion for a different time with the board, which is the very, very important issue of the transition. We have a lot of activity underway, as you guys talked about in some prior meetings, and that is something that still needs some focus, but that's beyond the scope of this evening's discussion. All you're doing this evening is providing feedback on the draft RFP that we can then proceed with.
and this is based on the timeline that we're hoping to start a new contract for the fiscal year. July 1. Yes? Is that the original intent?
Well, I think we were talking about that some months back. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to
make that
complete that process by July. I seriously doubt that we can. And we're into an election that's going to be at least two new board members, and we can initiate this process. But I think the new board members should be part of the selection process rather than having the old board make the selection. Let's have the two new board members, three new board. Who knows? I don't know how many board members there are. New board members. Mary and I are the two holders for sure. And I think there has to be a transition that fits the needs of everyone here. It's just not going to be July 1st, sorry, you leave and a new person's on board, et cetera. There's got to be a transition. I see that transition maybe taking 6 months after July 1st. So, on the specifics, there's Pam had run into legal firms at a previous conference that provide services. I mean, there's a lot of.
Yeah, that do special districts and that do sanitary a lot. Conferences do have, they all come out.
Sure. What would be the process? How wide a range would we cast this net? San Francisco Bay Area only, or there's.
That's a good question. I mean, because the reason, I guess, the main point that brings to me is, and obviously this, I'm just reminding the board, because this is definitely the board's decision. You had put earlier at least partial emphasis on, I think, what I'd call a local presence. Mm-hmm. And to the extent that that is a priority, obviously that would influence how widely you would want, how much effort you want to go to circulate this. Mm-hmm. There are some standard posting sites. Obviously, it's, we're a stone's throw from San Francisco and the East Bay. But that would be, I think, a question you need to ask yourselves, because that would sort of dictate how we distribute and post it. It definitely would. I mean, if we're throwing it wide open, hey, there's postings that would cover the state, but there's some more limited postings that obviously would cover, Marin County and San Francisco. So it kind of ask yourself, or ask yourself, what's the ranking of some of these priorities that you're looking for?
A number of the cities in Marin contract with different law firms, and some contract with the same law firm. I think Fairfax and Mill Valley have the same lawyers.
Santa Fe, CMSA.
Santa Fe, CMSA have the same.
And don't they have Larkspur too?
No, County Council, that's what I'm saying. They have the same lawyer.
San Anselmo, Kidron,
Los Gleans,
My point in saying what I said is there's a conflict of interest with county in regard to CMSA, etc.
One thing that is in here is wastewater conveyance legal services, maybe to get a,
sure.
Because that was one of the things that came out of the discussions that we had, so.
Someone knows the wastewater business.
But we also talked about risk.
Well, the CSDA group, we discussed that a little bit.
There was something that we talked about on risk. You wanted to keep that here. Okay.
All right, well.
We've had the same lawyer for 3 years now? About 3 years. But generally, some cities and some districts change general managers every 3 years, and some change lawyers every 3 years, and so it's just kind of a process that evolves. The Berliner Cohen for providing good services to our district. It's time to make a change. We all recognize that. And so this process is going to work to fit all our needs, the districts, Berliner Cohen's, the communities, the issues here. They've been working with us for a long time to get results. Anything more? Do you think the RFP's ready to go, or do you want?
Well, I think you make a good point, and I will say that, based on the original statement that we wanted to try to be contracting with the new firm July 1, that's one of the reasons why I was like, let's get this on the agenda now, so it's actually feasible. But I do think you make a really good point about the new board and actually wanting the new board to have confidence.
Yeah, it's going to take, I've been through the process, Kat's been through it. It's going to take setting up interviews, setting up all that just takes a long time.
So
narrowing it down.
Okay.
We could aim, just as a suggestion, we could aim towards having a proposal submittal deadline that is shortly after, or whatever, I forget the exact schedule, but something on the order of a couple of weeks after the completion of the election cycle. So at that point, you've done as much as you possibly can. once the new board is seated, shortly thereafter, you know that you have the submittals coming in, and now the group is here to start considering them. That's just trying to line it up to where you've done as much as you can ahead of the new board, but not too much. I mean, you could always back it up further and say, well, don't even issue the RFP until the new board's on, what have you. But if you're confident enough about the priorities you're looking for and the scope of posting, by that I mean, do you want to go statewide, do you want to go Bay Area? You could sequence this or target it in a way that says, okay, and I forget when the new board would be seated when?
Late July.
Yeah, it's usually July 20th or something, because because you have, the registrar has to certify the
30
election.
days after that
Okay.
certification.
So if we suggested like a third week of July schedule, or backed out from a third week of July schedule, where that's the due date of the proposals, that's just a suggestion. That way, basically, once the new board is seated, these things haven't gotten stale, they just came in. Obviously, they kind of have to hit the ground running, being the new board, but
Well, don't need to
We
get
issue
caught up a little
July,
bit.
send them out July 1st and have the due date July 20th
yeah, or
or
late
something like
June.
that.
Late June would give you a month. I always assume, and you would know better, but I figure about a 30-day posting period for
Yeah, they're
interested parties to
usually about
respond.
2 or 3 weeks.
So
There was
shorter.
because there's, you'll probably get a lot of responses. But if you're just looking locally here, that might reduce it.
Mhm.
Because there was a park district out in Alameda County, a park and rec district. I think they got something like 24 responses. For park and rec.
Okay, so perhaps if this comes back to the next meeting with an outline of dates,
Okay.
rather just say, no, okay, go put the RFP out. Let's have the board really, Peter needs to be part of this.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, we can check last year when the rotation happened, but I think it was about.
It was late.
It was.
Oh, I know, it was July 25th,
Oh.
2012. Do you guys not remember the date, July 25th, 2012? I was sworn in and Brett Richards resigned.
Yeah, no, yes, I recall, because I said, welcome to the closed session, you will, I'm not sure be careful for what you wish for, or something like that.
All right, just to be technical, I'll take it out to the public. Any public comment on this item?
Yes.
Rick Holland, Fairfax?
Fairfax. No, I appreciate the discussion. I think it's really helping to look at a transition. And there were kind of 2 questions I had. And I guess first, because it was 3 years ago when you came in, kind of, because, personally I think the legal representation of the district the past 6 years has been disastrous, but I don't lay that on you. And you came in and it's been a difficult period. So that the distribution, and it is interesting, the question
okay.
about,
You need to speak to the board, not the lawyer.
Yeah, but this was personal, so, the distribution of what would go, and I think 30 days is a good period to give people the time to fill it out, with RFPs. And what Frank was saying, speaking as one of the candidates, it would be great, I think, if there was, the process had gone through and there were a list of potential candidates, even maybe winnowed down a little bit. And I don't know, the considerations based on price versus the whole local issue is interesting because we do have several law firms that represent towns locally, and there are certainly conflict of interest issues between anybody that's in the Ross Valley. And, we think of Epstein, we live in San Anselmo, and of course the county and so forth. So there are certain considerations that will have to be taken, but we definitely would want somebody local that's knowledgeable of our area and what's going on, and hopefully lives locally and not driving over from the East Bay every month when they're needed. So the timeline, I think it's a good idea, but so if you actually had by maybe July 15th or something, the RFPs returned, we kind of backtrack that, and it wouldn't need to go out until around June 15th, but you would have to pass something in May, I guess, to be able to get those out by June 15th, so it's not that much time. But it would be nice to have the process moved along.
Great, thank you. I heard Pam say risk management, and I think you're right. I think this doesn't reflect that, and that was one of the goals of sort of what we want to make explicit in what we're looking for. So anyway, so I guess we're directing to bring this back next month, and I with a few edits like that, like adding risk management. And then I noticed project and scale and project, and that should be services on the under proposal content number E, section E. It refers to a project, and these are really legal services.
Oh, sure, gotcha, thanks. Yeah.
So there are two. Yeah.
Well, it is kind of a project.
Yeah. We're a project.
You guys are a project.
So is that sufficiently clear? Greg, do you understand?
Yeah.
Bring it back with a timeline.
Yep, timeline.
We're not mentioning money here, are we?
Well, I was just gonna ask, so a question,
That,
Maybe that's part of the RFP. What service do you provide and how much is it going to cost us?
Well, there's a contract that said, proposed sample legal services agreement. So I, and then the district, so it looks like.
we'll negotiate final contract terms with the
G and I
project.
say, you
Oh,
tell
it's-
us,
okay.
you tell us how you're gonna pay us.
Yeah.
I mean, how we're gonna pay you.
Yeah. So actually, I did a quick question as I was listening to some of this. What we don't have in here currently, and we do sometimes do this for other types of proposals for RFPs, is we haven't told them, you could kind of read it between the lines, but we
Sure.
haven't said what the evaluation criteria are.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
okay.
So if we, let's say we had a 2-person or a 3-person panel that was going to go through some ranking sheets.
Right.
So would you like, well, my suggestion is to the extent you're comfortable with it, is to try to add, and we can bring you a draft, so you'll get a chance to refine it, but to simply add something here that says something like, proposed evaluation criteria.
turn the page.
Yeah.
Look at the top, proposal evaluation.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
and
Mary. Okay,
G and I think, address Frank's thing. Frank's
Following
concern.
references,
Proposed
proposed-
fees, costs and charges,
Okay, never mind, we're covered. We're covered.
hourly rate,
Yeah.
flat rate, fixed retainer.
Okay.
That's how it was when I did the proposal, was you proposed a contract, and then the contract I got was something that the district prepared.
Yeah, okay, we're covered there, never disregard, yeah, you got it, that's somehow, and I did read this.
It's just a test.
It's getting late.
Yeah, that was the trick question.
Yeah.
So
It's
we're gonna
pretty
make
well
sure
spelled
that any requested updated information, are you gonna send out an email to us to let us know that you're gonna need some of this feedback by a certain date?
What I would probably do, Pat, is I would send you a draft work, I will send you this as a
Like
work
you have in the
draft,
past.
yeah.
'Cause
So we do that in the run-up to we want to bring this back to the May board meeting. Now, that would not be for, well, what's your guys' preference on that? Because Frank, I know you're not, I don't think you're here for the May meeting. Do you want to?
Are you doing 1 or 2 meetings in there?
Oh, 2, good point. We're going to do 2. Yeah, actually, just to digress for a second, I guess I meant to say so. So the 21st meeting right now, just because obviously the state, we're sort of assuming the only topic on the agenda for the 21st is the
And
18th.
then we're coming back from business on the
So, I mean,
28th.
there may be some consent calendar stuff that would be.
Wait a minute,
you know,
I thought you said the draft budget, too.
That would be at the second May meeting, so that's what we're saying. The plan for May, because of the volume of business, is to have 2 meetings. The first one being dedicated to the 218 hearing, the second one being all the other regular business. So if there's no concerns with attendance and other things, this would come back to you refined for the second meeting in May. So that's probably whatever that is, the 28th. Yeah.
Okay, so Peter will be here, Frank, you're gonna be out of town.
Well, I fly out of Pisa on the 28th, and
Okay.
it goes backwards. So
Okay.
I arrive here
Okay.
on the same day I leave,
Okay.
even though it's a 13-hour flight. Well, I don't know what time I'd arrive. I have to look at my schedule to see what time I get in the SFO.
Something tells me you're gonna be up.
Well, you know,
Maybe a
this
little
will
jet
be,
lag.
we'll be able to circulate a Word file draft of this, and, to the extent that there's a board direction, it would simply be to issue the RFP. So if you guys, it's up to you how you want to handle it, but there's certainly, we're far enough along on this that there's no problem bringing this back to May 28th.
And if you provide to us something we can work with
Ahead of time.
so we can get our feedback to you as that, hey, you're the.
Yeah, no reply all.
Magnet.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no reply all.
Not a problem. Not a problem. I've got enough feedback from this evening to take this forward.
We can do this debt service.
Does that sound okay?
That sounds great. All right, so I think we are also continuing the general manager's report.
Yes, that would be great, since there is not
There
one.
was.
Can I just throw in my little thing about LAFCO's most recent meeting?
Sure.
Okay, so LAFCO, Keen Simons, he's terrific. At the same time, definitely part of the discussion is the tabling of reopening to look into the consolidation concepts between the greater central Marin area between San Rafael, Cordillera. I don't know if Cordillera really is going to be part of that. I'm sure they will. But at least San Rafael is asking LAFCO to look into the concepts regarding consolidated efforts and to include this information, the most recent, the future sphere of influence report, which will be deliverable in 2015, I think, or close to the end of 2014. What was interesting was, of course, Gary Phillips, the mayor of San Rafael, was at the table. And he and I were enjoying the discussion. In other words, he was smiling the whole time, and so was I. So I'm intrigued with I'll be intrigued with the outcome. I'll be interested to see if they're going to be looking closely at the study that Ross paid for already. If I were them, I'd be looking at it. It's already paid for. And then Keene, I let Keene know that that Ross Valley is looking forward to our working relationship with LAFCO, and that he wanted to know a lot from me. Especially, it was interesting that he was interested in size of pipe in the district and miles of pipe and this and that. And he was already on the case, in other words. So I thought it was a good meeting, and I'm glad to see that they're looking at it. So.
I think possibly this Valley Sanitary District has to be included in any discussion.
Oh no, yeah, definitely.
I mean,
they're not just looking at us. No,
They're half a Santa Fe.
it was pointed out that was yeah, absolutely, yeah. So that's my report.
All right, any other?
How many people were there?
3 people, including myself in the crowd. And of course, they had a full board. Dennis Rodoni was there.
Good.
Gary Phillips.
Like 7
Of course,
on the
Judy
board.
Arnold.
7 on the board.
Yeah, and then, let's see, the one lady, I don't remember her name, but I know that there's a couple of new people, I don't remember their names, but.
I was
Katie, not Katie Rice, but
Sear.
Kate Sear was there. And it was a fruitful meeting.
I attended the North Bay Water Association meeting as a representative of Central Marin Sanitation Agency. Pam attended.
So Greg.
And Greg attended.
It was great.
So what was interesting is the future of the water supply was centered around wastewater.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was talking about it, and hot topic. It is a hot topic statewide, and there's $800 million available right now. So at CMSA, we're going to try to expedite our study here to see if we can get an application into the state before December of this year. Possibly not. It may take a little longer, but we're gonna try to make that first round with the $800 million of state money that's available for
Well, Jason was given his walking orders on that thing that last meeting. They want, Al Borough and Ms. Wushi, they said, what are you doing with this? Why are we getting a deliverable here? So, that was pretty encouraging.
And then on another topic, on the topic that's coming up at the next meeting, I've talked to a few folks who got the 4-page letter from us and recycled it. So they said, well, what about this rate increase? And I said, well, you got the notice. And they said, I never got a notice. I said, yeah, you did. You got a 4-page letter. I said, I got some thick, I don't know, we look at it, you would recycle. I'm afraid that some people have not even paid attention to our notice. Number two, I'm not sure if this facility is large enough to hold that meeting on the 21st. You may have to look at one of the schools.
Oh, yeah, we did the junior, didn't we?
Kent Middle School.
Kent
Middle school, yeah.
we've used before.
We had several meetings there.
And we did Basage too.
Oh, community center?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, we've done
Oh.
It's one of the old
You might take a
Hamilton
look
Field air
at
handlers.
those locations. I wish the notice, on the back of the notice, is a little bit of writing at the top of the whole back page is almost empty. If we probably would have put a little form on there to explain to folks if they wanted to protest, they could fill in name, address, assessor's parcel number, and a statement. I protest the rate increase. Place for signature, they could cut it out and send it in. I think it's almost it's not. We're not going to get a 50% in one protest out of this. And if people are asking me about it, and I've been getting emails from people, and I actually got something from one of the large property owners in Fairfax saying they're protesting me. And I've told them they got to send it to the district.
I'm getting emails too.
Sending it to me, emails to me, or no.
So I'm sending them to you, Greg. Sorry, but I don't, they have to be
They have to
documented.
be received at the meeting or
counted.
at the district.
And if you see that people have been, everything I get, all of the board members have been copied on it.
Okay.
You know,
You need to receive
Okay.
them.
Well, the one letter, I thought maybe I faxed it in. I'll refax it to the district.
Well, I keep
I
waiting
mean, I
for
personally
Mr.
think,
Gilardi to show
are you
up.
done?
Yeah, go ahead.
Don't you think on Prop 218, isn't there anything happening with that to be amended or reviewed? Have you heard anything of that? The thing is
I
just
haven't,
horrible.
no.
Who should,
Well, they used to do rate increases without 218 protest hearings.
well, that's true.
So it is a step
Who
forward.
would you talk to? Would it be Jared?
It would be your legislature.
Oh, they're not going to change 218.
Let's see, I think it'd probably be Mr. Levine, wouldn't it? Nice Senate.
All right.
Well, Jerry Brown's up for reelection.
No, he doesn't have a contest.
All
right, so-
Are we not going to talk about the debt
And
service?
it will be a constitutional amendment too.
Is the debt service on the next agenda?
That'll be coming to the full board in May.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you all. I'm going to call us adjourned at 11:04.
Okay.